Good evening. I would like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Education to order. The next regular Board of Education meeting is on Tuesday, June 11th at 7:30 p.m. in the board meeting room. I'm going to skip the chairperson's report other than to say that I had the opportunity to go to the award ceremony for the seniors and juniors and present an award on behalf of the Board of Education. And it is such a special time to be with all those students and see all the different things, academic, extracurricular, things that get done in this community. So I thank the high school administration for a really special ceremony and for all the students for everything they do to continue to develop themselves as human beings and our community as a result. Okay, with that, I will move to public comment.
Good evening. If anyone in person would like to participate in public comment, please approach the podium and wait for the chair to recognize you. Please state your name and address for the record, and you will have up to 3 minutes to comment. Please note the time with the chair.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. I'm Mary Connell Lifton, 180 Middlesex Road. You'll hear later tonight from Kate Gregory, and we're also being supported by Megan Shane, a former Royal teacher who leads OK to Delay in Darien, which is an organization whose mission is to support parents who are concerned about the extensive research regarding the devastating effects of early and excessive use of smartphones and social media. We're also joined by a number of other concerned parents through OK to Delay who are participating on the YouTube. So thank you for your support as well. That putting a supercomputer in the hands of a child was not a good idea was once an opinion, something that seemed right. But social scientists were still gathering data. The research is now in, and it is overwhelming, and it is not disputed, not by serious people. The reception of Jonathan Haidt's latest book, The Anxious Generation, has hit the public like a tidal wave. We know that smartphones contribute to more conflict in the classroom, to lower test scores, to higher teacher burnout, to cyberbullying, both inside and outside of school. And all of this is distracting from the business of learning. Schools across the globe and in Connecticut are acting on this issue, and Darien cannot continue to sit on the sidelines. We know that our teens are in a national mental health crisis. This is also not in dispute. We know this all too painfully in recent years at the high school. This is happening in Darien. We're hiring mental health specialists, we're adding counselors to our schools, expanding our curriculum to address mental health topics. But what if there was a way to improve kids' mental health that was proven, and the data backs this up, and it was free? Why wouldn't we do this? We know some parents may object, citing erroneously safety concerns, when in fact the research shows that 30 smart devices in a classroom in the middle of an emergency actually makes our children less safe. We believe that the majority of parents, however, do support getting phones out of schools. It's simply easier to say no phone, it's school policy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary Connell. I'm Kate Gregory, 15 Winding Lane. We understand the district is looking at rolling out a policy for our elementary schools, which currently have no policy regarding smart devices, despite numerous reports of 911 prank calls from Apple Watches, etc. For the middle school, where there's a policy, but it's abundantly clear that it's not enforced. Kids are on their phones in the hallways, in the bathrooms, listening to music during study halls, being invited to bring cell phones on field trips, etc. So as Jonathan Haidt has told us, simply saying they're banned is an unenforceable wish. Implementation of a real and enforced and uniform policy at the elementary and middle school level is a start, but the research doesn't say that risks posed by phones in schools and social media goes away once you're 14. We need a smart device ban at the high school level as well. These students are just as vulnerable, if not more so, and the stakes are higher. Their need to pay attention to learning without the distraction of texts and social media drama is even more critical, as this is the performance on which they are evaluated for college. We urge the board to prioritize the mental health of our high school students and include this critical cohort in the rollout of the smart device ban. We're delighted that the district has filled the position of coordinator of instructional technology to focus on AI, tech in the curriculum, Chromebooks, etc. And to ensure his remit is successful, we're asking the board to create a transparent and accountable task force made up of administrators, teachers, parents, maybe even students to collaborate on these critical issues. We need policies that work, that are communicated, consistently enforced, and respected in the schools and on the buses. We have one moment to make this successful, and we know our kids will find that loophole if we don't have a strong start to this. So in conclusion, we're asking the Board of Ed to implement and enforce a consistent device-free policy in all Darien public schools from elementary through high school and create this task force to help ensure its success. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Would anybody else in person like to participate? If anybody online would like to participate, please use the raised hand icon. We have no raised hands at this time.
Okay. Thank you all. With that, I'll move to the superintendent's report.
Good evening, everyone. Just Madam Chair has said, thank you to everyone who's responsible, staff, students in particular, and our members of the community for supporting all the awards nights, field days, musical concerts, and also a highlight this past week was the school science a course that they run at the high school, just absolutely phenomenal. And it was nice to see an alumni come back and give an address, and I would encourage us to just come and give the graduation address. It was so good. So thank you for everybody who participated and make those possible. I just want to wish good luck tonight to Theatre 308. I think they are at the Halo in Waterbury on, I think they're actually going to be performing tonight, I think, because it was either that or there was a lot of prom dresses going on by the high school this afternoon. But good luck to them. I think they're up for something like 19 awards. Congratulations to the Henley School, who placed third in the Area 9 cable video competition. Their selected category was the elementary newscast that was under for 10 minutes. We look forward to the Darien Public Schools retiree celebration. It will be at Ox Ridge on June 11th at 6 o'clock with a reception commencing at 6:30. And then we will return to Central Services for a regular board meeting at 7:30. Just a reminder that the Darien Summer School and ESY programs will commence Monday, June 24th and go through July 26th. Student schedules for ESY have been provided to the families, and extended school year will be forthcoming in the next week or so. And good luck to our students here, if both are attending the senior prom on Friday night. Thank you.
Okay.
We'll be brief tonight.
Thank you. Student representative reports. Swaha and Brenna.
So we had a successful art show on the 21st, which was the last Wednesday, and seniors had their last day of school on the 17th, and they're now, myself included, on our internships. And we had our annual scholarship / awards ceremony this past week as well on the 22nd, and seniors will be having their prom this Friday, May 31st at the loading dock in Stamford. Yeah, and on May 17th, we had our junior prom, which was a smash hit. It was a wonderful event. And we had the ASR Science Symposium last week, which celebrates the work of these students who are in this 3-year elective program where they develop a project and put research into it. And then we had our band concert and jazz ensemble concert on Thursday or 2 Thursdays ago. And tomorrow, Triumph has its small ensemble concert, which is a culminating concert of groups from all different branches of music. And we'd love to see great turnout there as well.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move to the approval of the minutes. May I have a motion to approve the following: the minutes of the regular meeting held on May 14th, 2024. That is Julie, seconded by Greg. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Board committee reports. John?
The Finance Committee met on the 23rd of May, and we have a few transfers that are going to be presented this evening.
Okay. Anyone else? Julie?
Thank you. Communications Committee met on Friday, May 17th, and we have an item on the agenda tonight from that committee.
Anyone else? Okay. That will move to presentations and discussions. We'll start with further action and further discussion and possible action on revised fiscal year 25 budget modifications. Before I turn it over to Alan, tonight is the third of 3 planned meetings to make budgetary adjustments, aligning our budget with the appropriation we received from the Board of Finance and the RTM. These adjustments must be completed before the end of June, but we set aside time during 3 meetings this month. Firstly, to give ourselves flexibility just in case, and second, as Alan noted last meeting, understanding the impact to our staff and our community. As is done during our traditional budget process, the superintendent started the discussion with a series of suggested adjustments. These were provided to us on May 7th. During that meeting and at our meeting on May 14th, we as a board asked questions and provided feedback about these options and others. We listened to community feedback received at board meetings over email and of course, as each of us circulated around town. Administration has adjusted their proposed options accordingly over this time period. The priority for our board remains education and the student experience. Our goal at this third meeting is to vote tonight. Alan and the team will summarize their recommendations. Following that, we can handle any outstanding questions, and then we'll discuss the process by which we'll vote. With that, Alan, I'll turn it over to you to walk us through the latest set of.
So again, I will just walk through just in general terms here, and then we can stop along the way or when we conclude. This is slightly different if there's people in the audience or online. This is slightly different than the last meeting up with the last presentation. We went back, listened to what we thought were the sentiments and wishes of the board. Obviously, it's not easy to get everything on the table, but there were some general takeaways from the Board of Education and also from the community that we tried to build in here. It's difficult just to hit the number, so we tried to present something that was in good faith that would hit that particular number. I've still tried to incorporate not to impact student-facing services. So you'll see some of those. You've probably already noticed some of those that are in there. And also, I'll continue to try and support the middle school in terms of teaching and learning, mental health support, reorganizations for organizational support, special education support. So those are also in there. So we've tried to go back, and it's hard not to impact some things, but we've tried to do that as best we can. So it's with that I'll share the main tenets of these particular proposals. We had 2 additional resignations, and we know we talked at the table the last time that we may have and experience additional resignations since the last time we sat here. So that went up from 5 to 7. I'll talk a wee bit in detail over the page. There was a turnover, and we had nearly $90,000 realized in turnover, and I'll talk to these issues in more detail. There's a new proposal. This is a new proposal to insource custodial services. We had the discussion at the table. Is there anything else we can do in that particular arena? We went back and looked at it. We eliminated the pay-for-play proposal. Perhaps I'm wrong in this, but there was a sense, I believe that there was a general sense that at least for this year, would not be a palatable thing, and you'd like a proposal that didn't include that in general. Restore the instructional paraprofessionals. It's not exclusively everybody, but I thought that there was a wish to reinstate those student-facing services. So we did that, and we modified that through reducing the 3 substitute teachers, which is on the next line. And we increased the replacement cycle for the high school displays from 3 years to 4 years to save some money. So in the preparation of this, how it was ranked, we was asked to prioritize it. So they're prioritized administrative recommendations 1 through 7, meaning we suggest, since it was asked, that we take the first recommendation, then we take the second recommendation. Within those recommendations, they're not ranked. I don't believe I should be ranking different teachers against different specific teachers, classroom teachers or otherwise. So as a chunk, they're ranked. So for the first one, this administration one, I won't go all over this. We can come back to it. But these are what you've seen before. There's nothing changed in there. We're still of the disposition that we should realize the $450,000 before we're going to the next budget year. We saw how we started and how we ended this year. I don't want to start the year. I think it would be a mistake to start the year with a deficit and the discussions ongoing throughout the year. Administration recommendation number 2. Well, taking laptops, high school displays, replacement desks, I certainly would do that before I would consider taking any other resources. So you can see them as listed. They have remained the same except for the high school displays that we have just deferred a third of the high school displays. Administration recommendation number 3 have been fairly consistent in the from enrollment to resignation. So this takes the resignation from 5 to 7, and that realizes a difference from $650,000 basically to $940,000. So that was a positive realization. The maintenance department we've already discussed. It's the same as it was before. The one non-certified staff turnover position, that is the same as the previous communications. The board included an inverse turnover of nearly 90,000 as part of the board's approved budget, currently approved or tentatively approved budget. There were 2 positions in their administrative positions. If they were to come, being eliminated, if they were to come back, they were going to cost us additional money just given the contract. So right now we are not realizing that because there are a couple of people who have stepped out, so that we can realize that savings back again, because the Board of Ed budget had included the 90,000. We now can realize that saving, and that's a relatively recent development. We did add in here a creation of a teacher leadership position, K through 12, instead of the stipend positions. As we talked about it the last time, it just seemed to make sense. And therefore, as opposed to just have stipend positions, we would have one free a teacher leader position, no teaching duties, likely from the secondary level, would oversee that for the whole department. That saves at the end of the day $3,400. Administration number 4, there's nothing changed about this. I understand that there's pros and cons and there's wishes and so on, but I still stand by that the class sizes and the configuration are what we should do, given class size guidelines and otherwise. So they have remained the same. There's nothing touched there. Administration recommendation number 5, the background checks, that was the same as previously communicated. The reduction in the outsourcing for the care of grounds, that was also in the previous communications. The district speech pathologist, that remains the same. The occupational therapy services for insourcing remains the same. The new one is the discussion about outsourcing some of the custodial services. Actually, we would be outsourcing some of those services. We basically see there that there's a savings of $93,000. That's for about 10 employees. We have a firm now that we use. We would be noticing that company. They would have to stay on record, so to speak, or be employed for 3 months. That's why you see the contracted cleaning phase in, because we would need to keep them for the 3 months. And then the other 9 months, we would contract in ourselves. We thought that seemed to make sense, and we would give that a go. I can't say how it'll completely work out, but we thought it made sense to at least try it. So that's 93,000 there. The revenues, the food service subsidy, I think we've spoken about that. We still kept the same configuration of the meals. Last time we discussed the advertising to take the revenues for that are anticipated at the full $25,000. The campus monitor remains the same. That was in the last time we spoke about it. And then we have reinstated the instructional paraprofessionals. That was the 5 that the administration recommended eliminating. And we've reduced the building substitutes. So Henley will end up with 3, Holmes with 3, Tokeneke with 3, Oxbridge with 4. And we already had a building substitute reduction through the board budget process. So the Royal would be at 3.2. That summarizes the major changes. That gets us to the 4.73, and we're happy to open it up for discussion.
Okay, for the purposes of just keeping it focused, I'll go through bucket by bucket and then open it to any set of questions that didn't fall in one of these buckets, and then we'll move to process. So any questions on administrative recommendation 1? Okay. Questions on administrative recommendation 2? Oh, Sarah, thank you.
So I appreciate you looking at more carefully at the technology that we use. I'm just curious why this is included now and wasn't included the first time. Like, is there an issue in doing this? Is there any reason why we shouldn't be doing this? Just curious why, this. Okay, is there an issue with doing this?
I mean, they are 15 years old, so
Okay.
they're quite old and they do need to be replaced. I'm talking to Jeff Adams, he does think we can push off a few more. There obviously are some that are in much worse shape, and those would be the ones that we target for replacement first.
Okay, and how much does each cost if we do need to replace one midstream?
4,300.
No, the displays.
Julie?
Thank you. On the same item number 3, the high school displays, could you just explain that a little bit better? I was thinking that we had 3-year-old displays that we were replacing every 3 years, and so
No,
that's
so they're-
clearly not the
They're
case.
15 years old, so they are quite old. The original proposal was to replace them all over 3 years. So you would do 30, 30, or 40, 40, and 40. So instead of doing 40, 40, and 40, you're going to do 30, 30, 30, 30.
Okay, so it's a lower number over a longer
Correct.
period of time. We're not just pushing off a $43,000.
No,
expense to
correct.
next
So
year.
instead of seeing 40, 40.
Thank you, that's helpful.
All right. Administrative recommendation number 3, and I'm going to start by kicking it to Marge and Rich and asking you guys to walk us through one more time the relationship between the contract that was negotiated, not this last cycle, but the one before, and what we see on the paper in front of us, please.
So the contract allows for teachers to teach 5 through attrition. So if a teacher leaves, whether it's a retirement or a resignation, for every teacher that leaves, 4 teachers pick up a 5th class. So if you have a PE teacher, a social studies teacher, et cetera, leave, 4 teachers will pick up that 5th class. So you have the same number, essentially the same number of sections. It's just each teacher is picking up 1 more. So in bullet 1 for recommendation 3, there would be 7 teachers leaving. So that would be 28 more teachers teaching 5 as opposed to 4.
Okay. And right now we have 40 teaching,
A little over, I think it's 41 in the core subject.
and those are all at the middle school?
Correct.
Because we've done this already at the high school.
Correct.
The only thing that I would add is that we were able to create the teacher leader position in Spanish because we would then be able to capture, we fully intend and hope that we can fill that internally. So that would be another way to get to the 5 classes.
Thank you. John?
So this is just simple math, then, excuse me, that we're left with 13 teachers teaching 4 sections.
Just about. So the bulk are really in math at the middle school, and then a couple here and there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions in area 3? Julie?
Thank you. And can you all just remind us why this has happened at the high school, but it didn't happen yet at the middle school?
The middle school schedule is much trickier, and we, as many of our surrounding districts, need the help of an expert to figure out how to make us run more efficiently. The high school is just more straightforward because it doesn't have the teaming model.
Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify the teacher leader position for K-12 world language does not have any teaching duties, but will not be responsible for evaluations.
That's correct, yep.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? You sent us an email with some information about why you like this model and what we see in areas around us.
I'm happy to talk about it from a curriculum point of view, generally speaking, and then I can defer to you. It's the case, well, as opposed to a stipend position for teachers working all day at the various school levels and trying to coordinate curriculum in response to parents and students and so on and so forth. So it gives us that K through model. We already have a K through model, so to speak, potentially at the for music and also for technology. Tim will be speaking this evening. So it's a wee bit more consistency around that. But then it just seemed to make sense to provide a wee bit more hands-on. Remember, this was not a position I advocated reducing. I should say I advocated, I put it in the budget. I did that because I did not want to increase the number of administrators in the district. I still believe the resources that are left in place is a better scenario, but it's not better than having the K through 12 leadership position of an administrator, but it certainly helps. And we certainly have experience of at least doing that in one other area.
Anyone else in this category? Julie?
Just to follow up to that, Dr. Adley, do you see this as a long-term solution, that this will work for the district long-term, or is this something that will work for now? And perhaps if there's a need to revisit curriculum or add another language, whatever the case may be, that it might need to change?
Well, it's certainly a solution for now, and it's certainly a solution for moving forward. Should the board or otherwise think that they would like to align word language back again at some point, and certainly that would be put on the table. But it's certainly a proposal to move forward with.
Thanks.
Sarah?
Amy, can you talk a little bit to how you will interplay with this position? And so my guess is you or the building administrators will do the evaluations, but how do you envision this person working with you in terms of curricular development and dealing with parents and that kind of stuff?
So actually, we've just had, I think, 2 or 3 of our first curriculum design meetings supporting our staff to write curriculum using the UPD model. And the reason why we're doing that is so that we have a systemic model, preschool through grade 12 across all disciplines. So I would like in any subject area be involved with the staff and forming a team. We believe strongly that our teachers should be at the helm of writing curriculum because that's really one of the most valuable professional learning experiences teachers can have, to get to know the standards really well. And then as far as the supervision and evaluation, from that perspective, I'll be working closely with the assistant principals and principals around not only high quality instructional practices, but what would be those specific to world language. So I'll be providing that kind of support and professional learning for the admin team as well.
And this person would be the parent contact, right? Instead of going to like the world language department chair if a parent had a question.
Sorry, for
Yes.
the parent contact piece, it would definitely not be the teacher on his or her own. That really is typically an administrative conversation that would be supported most definitely by the supervising principal or assistant principal, and perhaps even guidance person, school counseling person.
Thank you.
Sorry that I forgot.
No, all good.
Katie?
Amy, where do you envision this person being based out of? The point of my question is really, at the kind of divisional level where we had stipends, there would be someone who taught that grade and knew those teachers and was kind of immersed in that area. So how do you see this working?
I see this position working in a very similar way to teacher, leader, or coordinator for instructional technology. The person needs to be at all 3 levels. And that does work. You need to be more in schools than in central services, certainly.
By that, you mean that you expect them to do a fair amount of traveling and building visits?
Building, yes, being out in the schools. Mhm.
Okay. Anything else in category 3? Category 4. Questions? Katie?
I wanted to ask if we had any further developments on the work from the consultant about how we might envision these changes of staffing at the middle school being actualized in terms of team breakout and student scheduling.
The consultant has been in discussion. It's had some meetings at the middle school, at an elementary school, waiting for this evening to finalize the staffing arrangements so we can move forward with the next phase of it.
All right. Oh, go ahead.
Thanks. I just wanted to comment on the specials teachers again, just that I think that we heard really an overwhelming amount of public comment and emails received to the board about how much the community was really opposed to these reductions. And I think it bears repeating at this point in the game as well.
I think there was some content in in the email that you sent us, just so that we have all the information on the table. Would you mind reviewing what you sent us about why you were maintaining this recommendation?
Well, I've been consistent in terms of certainly enrollment and anything pertaining to scheduling. I think if we have flexibility in those areas, I think those are the areas that, in all honesty, we should look at first. If there's other criteria around enrollment or otherwise, we could revisit that. The board could revisit at a different time. But just working within those constraints, we do have of the 12, I think it's 12 PE teachers, we have 7 are itinerant right now. So it's not a model we're not accustomed to. Yes, there are no art itinerant teachers right now, but that's not inconsistent with other districts who actually do have itinerant art teachers. So it was a level of consistency, and also just I believe that it's an efficiency we should realize whenever you're looking at making all the reductions that we're looking at.
I may have misheard, but it's 12 itinerant music teachers, right?
No,
I thought I
about
heard
7.
you
I
say-
think we have about 7 or so.
Sorry, 12 music teachers, 7 are itinerant. I thought I heard you say PE, so I was just making sure. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions there?
Can I, just one question on the art, you're saying that would occur through attrition because we have a current vacant art position, is that correct?
Filled by itself.
Thank you.
Okay. Questions on number 5? Oh, sorry, Greg.
Just a quick clarification on the additional, I think it was groundskeeper, it said that it was a defined benefit versus defined contribution for others. I didn't know if there was a reason for that.
So the groundskeeper is a union position. And because it's a union position, that has not been negotiated to go into a defined contribution. The occupational therapists are unaffiliated, which is why they'd go into contribution.
Sarah?
Rich, so back to my question earlier about the displays. So why this new structure with the custodians? Why didn't you present this at the beginning? What's
yeah.
the concern about it?
So the concern is whether or not we can find people. There's only so much of a pool of people who will want to work part-time at night cleaning. They are more transient positions, but the contracted cleaning company we use are also more transient positions as well. So it'll be a challenge to find people, but the fact that we have 3 months to kind of gear up and staff, we think we can do it, and Kevin's pretty confident we can do it. We took another look at it after Mr. Maroney made a comment, I think it was at the May 7th meeting, about how we do contract out and why, are there other things that we contract out that maybe we can insource or vice versa. So financially, as long as we can find people, it'll work out. It's just whether we can find people.
So plan B, we can't find people. What happens?
So if we can't find, I think we can find some. So let's say that it's a mixture of, we can't find 10, but we can find a mixture. You still have the right to contract out on a smaller basis if we need to. You can cover things on overtime or longer shifts. We can flex the hours a little bit, because they're part-time. They don't necessarily all have to be at the same time, so we can be a little bit more flexible there.
Are you comfortable with this?
Yeah, I think we can make it work.
Julie?
Thank you. It's a good segue to my question, which is, do we have any newer information on availability of SLPs and OTs to make this work?
We're confident that earlier we can get the message out, the better we'll do. I think we did speak last time also that, to what Rich is saying also, if we don't, we'll have to contract, but we're hoping we can fill those positions. We're looking for 5 OTs. That's a large number. I think I had mentioned last time we might not reach that, but our goal is to reach that. And we'd like to start interviewing as soon as possible. SLP is the same thing. We're looking for 2 SLPs. So we're hoping that we've already begun to look for that. I think that's a very, very attainable number.
Thank you.
Okay. Recommendation number 6? Number 7?
Jill?
Okay, Sarah?
Thank you. Alan, you said this, but you said it very quickly before. Can you remind me the number of paras, if these are reinstated, how many will be in each building? And how many subs will be at each building?
The substitute, we have 3 for Henley, 3 for Holmes, Tokenique is 3, Oxbridge is 4, and Royal is 3.
And Paris would be 3 per building.
3 per building. Okay.
Okay. Thought process yet, but questions about budget items that are not here, John?
Just the not recommended category, the participation fees. I think we as a board discussed putting together some working group in terms of, let's just say, extracurriculars in general. So I just wanted to remind us all that we should hold ourselves to that standard and figure out what we're trying to figure out, and then, you know, move forward with some sort of working group.
Anyone else? Okay. With that, we'll move to process. When we handle transfers or other budget adjustments, we vote on them multiple ways. Sometimes we take things as a whole. Sometimes we parcel them out into smaller portions for a vote. Sometimes we go line by line. We have the option of doing any of those 3 things this evening. We do have a full proposal in front of us. You know, we certainly could start with the whole, but if there are people who want to do it differently. Yes, John?
I'd like to make a motion for the Darien Board of Education to adopt the superintendent's proposed budget mitigation strategies as presented in his memo dated May 28th, 2024, amounting to a total budget reduction of $2,453,682 to the original Board of Ed approved fiscal year 25 budget. This reduction equates to a revised fiscal year budget of $119,864,474, a 4.73% increase over the fiscal year 24 approved budget. I'd like a second.
Second.
Okay. All right, I'll open that for discussion. We can amend that point.
Well, I'd like to amend the motion to take this line by line.
Okay, is there a second to taking it line by line? Julie? Okay. All those in favor?
Which,
The amendment, we're on amendment.
thank you.
Okay,
Is
that's
there
Julie and,
No discussion?
oh, sorry, discussion. Go ahead. Thank you.
I feel very strongly that we need to take this line by line. This is our responsibility. This has been a long budget process, and I understand that there's fatigue. However, we are responsible to see this out with fidelity and not to succumb to fatigue. It is our duty to make a budget that is discussed thoroughly, a budget that is prioritized, a budget that is thoughtful. We do not approve up and down budgets at the beginning of the season without discussing things line by line. Essentially, what this process has amounted to is almost a second budget season. And even though we are in a second season, we've not come anywhere near the amount of effort that we put into the first one. There has not been individual ad cuts by the board. The least that we can do when presented with only one proposal is to go through them line by line and discuss and vote on their merits.
Julie?
I'll add to that. Thank you. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not sure that I think we're going to get anywhere wildly different if we take this all together or line by line this evening. But I do think that as practice, that should have been our plan from the get-go. As Katie just explained, we went back into this budget, we dug in, and we should have done it with a little more process, I think, frankly. And I think now we're at the 11th hour and we're looking at this, and based on what we have in front of us, maybe we're okay with this, but this isn't a transfer. This is us. We've reopened the budget. This is our number one responsibility of Board of Education members. And I think that it deserves the ceremony of going through it properly.
What do you mean by a little more process, Julie?
I think that we should have gone in, for example, I haven't really known how I'm trying to prepare for discussions because I don't know how we're going to approach the conversations on an item by item basis. I didn't know if we were going to vote for things together or if we were going to vote for them separately. I didn't know if things were going to be pitted one against the other because of that. And I think that if we had started when we first got our cut from the Board of Finance and sat down as a group, and I appreciate wanting to have the group weigh in on this discussion.
had we sat down together as a group and talked through where we needed to get and how we were going to get there and laid out the steps to do that. I understand we had 3 meetings and we had a proposal in front of us, but I think there could have been a bit more order enforced in how we went through the steps and went through the discussion. I think it might have enabled us to have more robust discussion. Our first meeting, the first proposal on May 7th, I think there were multiple people in the room that didn't speak at all. I don't think that people knew if they could add things, change things, switch things. I don't think people knew what they were doing. So I think that's what we've missed in this. And again, where we are now, I have a feeling that it's going to be where we land. And my comments this evening are less about what's going to happen tonight and more about how I think it could have happened and what I think might need to be considered for the future, should we find ourselves there again.
John and Katie?
I'm not fatigued. I actually do my work. I've gone through, I've proposed amendments. I knew what I was doing, Julie. So I'm not sure who those comments are directed to, but I take a bit of offense to it. Two, if you do have amendments to make from this proposal, please make them. That's what this process is all about. Thank you.
Katie?
I want to piggyback on the topic that Julie brought up about process. And I want to be quite clear so that no one is triggered that this is not personal or individual. As a board, we don't own this organization. It does not belong to us. We are simply stewards who are acting in good faith for the people that come next. In that vein, we have a responsibility to act in a way that will be upheld regardless of the circumstances. That is why we have policy. That is why setting policy is something that is made responsible for by the Board of Education. Policy should not be determined based on circumstances. Policy should exist outside of circumstances so that a decision can be made, not manipulated to fit the pieces. When we come into a meeting and we don't know what is expected of us, we are unable to prepare in good faith. When we have something in front of us and now we're trying to decide how to decide, it's a little like having the answers before we have the test. This should have been decided in advance. And I hope that we can look back on this budget season and see ways that we can improve the process going forward. As soon as we knew that the number that the 9 of us had approved was no longer feasible, we needed to think about how we were going to get to that number. And now here we are with an agenda asking us to make a vote, and we don't even know how we're going to make that vote. That's not best practice.
I'm one question. What do you mean by policy in this case? We are below the level of policy.
So I would say that policy exists so that you know what is expected of you when a circumstance comes about. The same thing for the budget process. When we go into budget starting in January, we know the process. We have a meeting schedule. We know that there's going to be an ad cut night. We know that there's going to be a vote night. We know how long before it goes to the Board of Finance, before the RTM. There is a timeline. Once we received a cut, no one knew what the timeline was, which meant that we had a task in front of us that we were not prepared to accomplish. So right then, our first task should have been to set the process. And now here we are with actual numbers in front of us, and we still don't have a process.
So, it's interesting. I would disagree. I think one of the really funny things that I've watched in my time watching this Board of Ed is that we have more than once, not necessarily the sitting board, but boards have gotten caught up in the exact right way to do something and how to do it, and gotten focused on, well, this is the night when you have to make this vote and that's how you have to do it. And you can't deviate from that. It can't be before the hearing, can't be after the hearing, can't be in the middle of the hearing, as an example. I think it's pretty critical. And one of the things that we've tried to do is actually use the board table to figure out how to work through our decision-making in one of the most effective ways possible, as opposed to trying to stick to a very prescribed process. We were very clear that there are 3 meetings and we will work through it to come to it. Whether or not we do line by line or whether or not we do in the aggregate, I personally think the goal of tonight is to come to something so that we can move forward. So I will at this time call for a vote on the amendment. All those in favor? That
Go
is
line by line,
Katie,
yes.
and this is the line by line. Katie, Julie, and Sarah. All those opposed? That is Greg, Dave, Dennis, John, Jill, and Robin. The amendment fails. There is a motion now standing to vote on the budget in the aggregate. Are there any amendments to the specific components of the budget? Is there anything anyone would like to adjust in what is in this package? You can do that by amendment.
Clarification.
Yes.
If a board member was to amend this proposal that comes to a specific number, how would that number then be reached?
So you need to have a put and a take, right? So if you want to take something out, you have to add something in. And again, that could go in either direction.
So how is a board member supposed to have an equal number in this moment, just now learning of that?
Go ahead. Well,
I mean, I don't mean a cheeky answer, but I would have been prepared with the spreadsheet that was distributed to come to a number with certain recommendations that were your own outside of what's been recommended by the administration.
And how would you have known that that process was how you should prepare for this meeting?
I think if you knew you didn't want, for example, the groundskeeper solution, and if any of us thought we didn't want the groundskeeper solution, then the responsibility would to come up with something that would
It's
replace
just
it.
interesting that didn't get mentioned when you called me. Wonder why.
Okay. Dennis?
Yeah, for me, I think we've known all along we have to back into a number and we have to have it total to that number. For me, I think the administration has done a fantastic job of listening to this board and of what our requests were to not eliminate as many student-facing people as possible, to try to do as many things as we can to eliminate that. I think we've accomplished that. I think Dr. Adley at the last meeting talked about how important the administration was, and he didn't want to change that. So that's referenced here. And I think this is about as elegant a solution as we can come up with to save $2.5 million.
Would you like me to reread the motion?
No, I think it just,
I have an amendment to the proposal.
yes.
Rich, is it possible for you to help me with the numbers in order to reinstate the middle school and specials teachers?
So you're talking about recommendation 4?
Yes, thank you. And my suggestion for the neutralizing the cost would be to remove the 2 additional APs, one at the high school, one at the middle school.
So the recommendation number 4 in total is 399,825. The 2 APs are 454,622. We did mention it, and Shirley can add if she'd liked. We don't think it works in a silo if you take out the 2 APs and then don't put back the program director. So if you were to factor that in, it's about $227,000.
So just, if you could just
Yeah, but so-
sum that all up on a net basis.
So motion to amend the motion to decrease the budget by 399,825 and increase by what?
No, I don't think she's ready yet. One
Oh.
second. Well, I mean, I think that.
So if you were-
We have to make the numbers work. Go ahead.
So if you were to take out bucket 4, it's $399,825. The 2 APs that are proposed are 454,622. However, we did say during the budget deliberations, we don't think it works in a silo with those taken out without the program director. So if you were to put the program director back in, but take the 2 APs out, it's $227,000. So you would be short $172,825.
Is there something else you'd like to add?
Can I ask a question, Jill?
Yes.
Rich, did we ever run numbers on different increases to the lunch pricing?
Yes.
Yep, so we did do, so Ms. Parent asked if it was a dollar increase instead of 50 cents. So if there's a dollar instead of 50 cents across the board, it's another 110,000. That assumes no drop off in sales, so just
Right.
same sales times the new price.
So an incremental 110,000. Okay.
Rich, can you repeat the number that it was, 127?
227.
But that we're looking for an
Oh,
additional?
172, 825.
172, thank you. Given the difficulty of preparing for this in the moment, and not having had the time, to prepare for this, my proposal will be to move as stated and have a surplus beyond the number that we were targeting for.
Okay, so you're moving to remove the two assistant principals, reinstate the program director? Correct?
No.
Just to take out the principals.
Just to take out the principals. Thank you.
Well,
Assistant
I just wanted to I just want for the record, that's not going to work as well for special education. So just,
Alan, I understand. I wasn't a fan of that in the beginning, even with the APs. I understand. I think that it speaks to where we're at in this budget process.
I just want to make sure that we're on the same page of actually, Katie, what you actually mean is what you're saying, or what I understand you're saying.
Yeah, so to be honest, Alan, I appreciate that your job is difficult and that you're looking for efficiencies. I really do. The proposal of the administrative reshuffling is not something that I ever bought into. I think that it was a detriment to special education in particular. I also believe that we had in-house capacity for some of the things that you mentioned. And I also think that even with the proposal in the budget, we were likely facing increased costs outside of this budget. I think that it would be very, very difficult to move from having a K through 5 and a 6 through 12 program director in special education to a K through 12 without needing to add someone, another administrative assistant, some sort of support, probably a significant salary raise that's not included in this budget. The same thing for moving into one visual and performing arts, an administrative assistant, a salary bump, an additional person. So I believe that this budget already had baked in costs that were going to come with the shuffle that were going to be future costs. And I see this as no different.
So just to be clear, you're suggesting removal of the assistant principal at the middle school and high school and keep the current configuration that we're working on special education at the moment. Is that correct?
So I am not supportive of the current configuration that has happened in this budget process. However, given that a process was not set forth for this meeting, I do not have time to come up and crunch the numbers at the table.
I generally, it is the expectation that board members would understand their.
I asked you 3 times, Jill, over the past 2 weeks.
Same thing.
I just want to be
They're
clear,
different.
though, Madam Chair, that you're talking about keeping the two administrators in special education. Is that what you mean, or you mean one?
I don't have the numbers to add back the two for K through 12.
Okay, Katie, would you please clearly restate your motion and we'll see if there's a second?
Yes, as I said originally, I am amending this proposal to reinstate recommendation 4 to middle school teachers and both special teachers at the elementary. And in order to offset the costs, I suggest removing the additional AP at the high school and the additional AP at the middle school.
Okay, is there a second? There is not. The amendment fails. Okay. Any further amendments or other discussion? With that, I'll take a vote for the motion on the floor. All those in favor?
Can you please repeat the motion?
John, you have it written down.
Maybe without all the commentary?
I'll take a minute. The motion on the table that I proposed was for the Darien Board of Education to adopt the superintendent's proposed budget mitigation strategy as presented in his memo dated May 28, 2024, amounting to a total budget reduction of $2,453,682 to the original Board of Ed approved fiscal year 25 budget. This reduction equates to a revised fiscal year 25 budget of $119,864,474, a 4.73% increase over the fiscal year 24 approved budget.
All those in favor?
Do we have discussion or no? Are we past that point?
Oh, sorry. Did you have something to say?
I do. Yes, I do. I am going to vote for this. However, I just want to be on the record that there are things in this proposal that I do not support, but I think this is the best of the worst. And I thank the administration for doing the work to going back and finding the best of the worst. This has not been an easy process. It is a process that I do not believe the Board of Education should be put into. I do not believe that the town cannot afford our original budget. But we are forced in this position. I would be voting for things that I do not want to vote for.
John?
I think it's a given that all of us are voting for elements of a reduction that we're all not supporting.
I just
because
wanted
we
to be
all.
on the record.
Yeah,
and you can be on the record
I'm
as
not
well.
arguing with you.
Well,
I'm-
okay, so
I'm
you're
just-
done.
I'm restating. I'm sorry.
John, finish, please.
And I think we should reflect as a board and how we conducted our own budget process so we don't wind up in this situation again in the future.
Okay, I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor? That is Greg, Julie, Dave, Katie, Dennis, John, Jill, Sarah, and Robin. Okay, I'd like to thank our administration for their hard work, finding material operational savings, all the while focusing on minimizing the impact to the student experience. Going forward, I recommend we as a board hold on to two truths. One, that we can and will deliver academic excellence that serves the whole child and meets the needs of all our learners. And two, that we must work to do so with the greatest efficiency for the taxpayer. We as a board need to hold ourselves and school management to both truths every day. As we do this, we need to expect our partners to walk the walk with us. We have work to do to prepare for next year. Thank you to each of you around this table for your work. With that, I will move on to the instructional technology update, Dr. Fettigan and Mr. McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. McGuire, for being here with us tonight. Mr. McGuire is going to take the lead on the presentation. If you recall, there was a presentation in the winter where he touched upon 14 individual items. And I know we're looking to keep the comments brief tonight. So with no further ado, I'll pass it over to him.
Before I start, I wish I had some cookies or something to give you guys because that was.
Is that mic on there,
Yeah,
Tim?
I think it is. I just have to stand
Yes,
closer to it.
thank
Yeah.
you, please.
So, all right. So for those that don't know me, I am Tim McGuire, your instructional technology coordinator. Thank you for letting me join you this evening. It's a hard act to follow up right there. So I'll do my best to keep it brief. Dr. Adley told me 15 minutes, man, 15 minutes. So here we go. I have substantially compressed my presentation. So there's a lot of additional information in the memo that I provided to the board this evening. I encourage you to get the opportunity to look at that.
Stay close to that mic, Art.
Close to the mic. Okay. All right. I'm short. So what do I say about that? So last December, when I came in, presented with you all, I introduced my work or aligned it around two documents we have in our district, the Future Ready Technology Plan and the Darien Strategic Plan. So in a few moments, when you see me mention focus areas such as FRTP2 or DSP5, I'm referencing the bullet points under those documents on this slide. And so back in December, I also introduced 7 focus areas that I intended to address during the second half of this year, as well as seven additional ones. Come on, slide, back up. There we go, 7 additional ones that were meant to be started this year and continue forward next year. So there are 14 focus areas altogether since that December presentation, and the items outlined in orange are addressed in the slideshow presentation that I'm sharing with you right now. All 14 are addressed in the memo for the board this evening, okay? So at least the good news is I'm going to start with my favorite. This is my favorite part of my job is working with the teachers and on the opportunity to also work with the students. So I've offered 20 professional development sessions this year for staff across the different buildings, and I look forward to continuing that work next year. The pictures you see here are opportunities where I had the opportunity to actually work in with the students, whether it was troubleshooting Dash software or helping teachers introduce video editing software in the classroom with their students. So those are some of the things that I really enjoyed doing my job. Come on, slideshow. Oop, too far, too fast. Okay, there we go. Tonight, I introduce you to the Darien School District's Digital Library for Instructional Technology. This is a portal available through our website where anyone can see what software is approved and available for students in our district. Staff have logins to this product where they can also learn a little bit more information about individual software programs as well as request tools that they might want to have access for. So this is an improvement on what I had presented earlier this year. All right. So what are those top programs in use in our district? I have a couple charts to share with you. This first chart here represents grade bands K-2 on the left side and 3 to 5 on the right side. And these are the top 12 programs in use in our district on district-owned devices for instructional software. I broke it down grade K-2 on the left side because there are certain software programs that we only use K-2, such as Seesaw and I Know It, while IXL, for example, starts in grades 2 through 5. I also have some data for you at the middle school and the high school level, though a word of caution about the high school data, it's a bring your own device environment. So it's a little bit hard to fully measure all the software deployed and how it works there because of that environment. However, I feel confident saying that the software we have here as a top 12 is most likely applicable to all of our 1,400 high school students. All right. Now, besides what software we're using, how much are we using it? Oops, too fast. Come on, clicker. So this chart here is meant to communicate to you when you're looking at it an entire school day, right? So the dark blue band you see at the bottom of the chart is the top 12 software programs I showcased averaged per student per school day in the date range that I selected of 10 school days. So that's what the software reports the students are spending on average per student per day in those top 12 programs. From there, I reached out to some staff as well as some students and I asked for kind of some calibration on that. It's like, is there any time that we're not really fully capturing in that? And I did get some feedback that, yeah, there's time that we're not. Students are on the individual assigned devices, and that's that second medium blue band there. The point of this slide is one important takeaway for you is that the vast majority of our students' school day is not spent on individual software on a district-owned device in the classroom. It's just a portion of the day. I don't have the high school represented here. It's partially, again, because of the bring your own device environment. I do have some data that suggests that use at the middle school and the high school are similar. The high school actually might be slightly less during the regular day, but more in the evenings and weekends. So that dark blue band does also partially capture homework time as well. All right. So moving a little quickly away from this for a moment, one of the other focus areas, we've made some better calendar integration on our website. We have worked to improve the navigation, and EduPlanet 21 will be released within 2 weeks, I believe. That's right. All right. Working this year with a volunteer group of teachers administrators, we have the District Technology Committee, or Council, excuse me. And one of the things we did this year is work on several important documents meant to guide some of our work. One of the documents referenced here is a computer technology use guidance. It has guidance for staff on how to create a healthy classroom environment with technology. And it shares some research in it, and also introduces an integration matrix called PICRAT, which I want to share with everyone this evening just for a little bit. So PICRAT is a technology integration matrix whose purpose is to help staff reflect on how they're using technology in the classroom. Horizontally, how does the planned use of technology impact their learning experience for the students? And vertically, how are the students working with that technology? Let me overlay some examples for you from my own teaching practices in the past. So when you're looking at this, this is meant to be for staff to help reflect on their use of technology with students. I don't want you to take it that staff should land in a certain part of the grid. That's not the idea at all. Honestly, we want a range of experience for our students across the entire grid. So if you're looking, for example, at the top of that, you might be tempted to think, oh, well, all the work should be there. No, that tends to be more summative or cumulative over the course of a unit. But if you're looking on as a staff member and you're finding yourself often in the bottom left corner, let's get together and talk about how we might vary and change that experience for you and your students in the classroom. In the classrooms I've been in, I generally see a pretty broad range of experiences for students with technology. All right, and that's a tool. This is something I'll be featuring with staff going forward in my work with them. All right, clicker, there we go. Collaboration happens in lots of different ways. Holly Clark, bottom left picture, has been to our district and is helping us shape some guidance in the future around artificial intelligence. And she came and did a demo lesson in a 5th grade classroom, introducing a safe and kid-friendly generative AI chatbot with students to interact with historical figures. On the top right, we have some of our high school students participating in an NHRL robotics competition. And I leave the big picture there of NHRL because they've reached out to us. We are kind of an unusual participant in their organization, which features advanced hobbyists from around the world, and as well as engineering firms such as ASML over in Wilton, and colleges, MIT and UConn were there the last time I was there. So we're a high school team that competes there. They're hoping to broaden their participation from schools, so they're creating a new product line with a curriculum that they want us to help create with them. So I'm looking forward to that collaboration. I think that'll be exciting for the future. All right. Oop, too fast. There we go. Next year with staff, one of the things I'm also hoping to do is to leverage the idea of micro-credentials, giving staff the opportunity and flexibility to learn more about each EdTech product that they like to use with their students. This is a sampling of 12 of products that are already in use in the district that offer these micro-credential courses with no charge, additional cost to the district, free for staff to use. So technology practices require continuous evaluation, and I anticipate more work on this focus area next year, but I do have important information to share with you now. There are 3 topics that have become mixed together: social media, personal devices, and screen time. They're not exclusive of each other, but I want to frame for you what the research tells us where our concerns should be and what we're doing to address all 3 of these levels of concern. Right? So this slide is meant to highlight a summary of our most basic summary of what we're currently doing in the district on these 3 areas at the 3 levels. And I've engaged in dialogue with school districts, besides actually about 20 different school districts, teachers in our district, administrators, some parents, and Dr. Dodd. One of the things I want to mention to you about screen time is one way we manage screen time in our district is how we deploy our devices. We are a 1-to-1 district, as districts around us are, but staff K4 are not sending devices home for homework, which is an exception to other districts around us that are still sending devices home as early as grade 3. We do start to send devices home in grade 4. Grade 5, not grade 4, starting in grade 5, though that varies somewhat. Some students take them home a lot, some not as often. Grade 6 through 8 is definitely the Chromebook model, and every district I spoke with uses that approach. That's in alignment with everyone else, and it's a cost-effective tool where other options would not necessarily improve learning outcomes for an additional investment. So at this point in time, I'm not advocating any changes on how we deploy the devices K-8 here. Staff are able to monitor student work when by proximity in the classroom, as well as through tools such as GoGuardian. Those are other ways we manage our screen time. Our BYOD model at the high school is not typical, but it's not unique. And for those who aren't familiar, our high school model is a bring your own device environment. Most other districts do report deployed Chromebooks. So our approach is not without its challenges, but staff feedback on this model through a survey administered in February suggests that most staff are either positive or neutral in nature rather than negative on it. Sure, there are a few negative responses, but we're going to get that with any survey, I suppose. I am not recommending at this time any significant changes to the high school model either. So the anxious generation is a text I think also heard referenced earlier this evening, highlighting research showing excessive social media consumption is leading to concerns with mental health and increasing rates of depression and anxiety among our students. Our approach to address this topic is multi-pronged. Dr. Dodd has been leading community conversations with parents on a number of workshops. Next year, social media awareness workshops will be held for middle and high school students led by Max Stossel, as well as a parent evening that should be happening in the fall. I attended his presentation in New Canaan, by the way. It was fantastic. If you're available that evening when it happens, I definitely recommend you go. School librarians, health and PE teachers, and ed tech teachers will continue to teach lessons on digital citizenship, including concepts tied to social media, in our effort to help students navigate the complexities of our digital world and cultivate a healthy relationship with technology. So schools, parents, and students have a shared responsibility in the development of positive habits. Based on the research and suggestions in Hate's book and others, next year we look to create a phone-free classroom in grades kindergarten through 8th grade by turning off and moving all student devices into backpacks and lockers. We want students to feel safe in their learning environment. We want staff to feel supported in their effort to reduce distractions. We trust students and recognize the majority of students will easily and rapidly adjust to these changes. Parents play a crucial role in shaping their children's attitudes toward technology, and we seek their support and partnership in this change. The district provided Chromebooks and tablets are sufficient for instructional purposes at the elementary level. With input from the elementary principals across 5 buildings and members of the District Technology Council, we revised and clarified the current guidance. Starting next fall, there are new guidelines to promote that positive learning environment and increase focus during instructional time across all 5 elementary schools. The administration at the middle school worked with team leaders while listening to the conversations with the elementary principals as they work to revisit and revise their policy. As in the elementary school, students at MMS do not need a personal device to complete their instructional work. And if they're telling you that they do, they're misspeaking. Okay, those students don't need it for schoolwork. A Chromebook is provided. We recognize that our community has active students engaged in a lot of activities after school hours, but it will be the expectation that devices stay off and away throughout the school day next year at the middle school. All technology practices require regular evaluation. At DHS, the BYOD environment and open campus approach complicates full restrictions. The leadership at DHS intends to engage their staff with more conversations about this topic in the coming months. Slideshow, there we go. Based on current public guidance and research, it is hard to determine exactly what is acceptable for an amount of educational screen time. Several traditional sources of information on recreational screen time have actually backed away from specific time recommendations after the age of 5 and have instead focused more on the interaction and type of screen time. Classroom screen time is managed in a few ways besides the deployment strategy that I discussed earlier. Our new digital library will help steer staff to approved instructional resources, and the technology guidance document I also mentioned earlier will help staff promote those healthy screen habits for our students, keeping a focus on purpose and learning objectives. The term gamification has come up as a point of concern for some people, and educators have been using games for a really long time. So for our purposes, what is gamification? What is it not? In short, gamification is a teaching method that turns the process of learning into a game using game mechanics and elements outlined on the left side of this chart for you. The goal being to engage learners and make learning more enjoyable and hopefully effective. Like any teaching method, it isn't perfect. Drawbacks might include an overemphasis on rewards and the potential for disengaging some students who aren't as interested in games. And games, as always, need to and must align with whatever our learning objectives are. So I do have a key point on this, though. Digital learning games in the classroom do not employ variable or unpredictable rewards. That would be gamification of learning, which I thought I had invented that term, but it turns out I did not. Gamification is when the reward for play exists, but its distribution or value is unpredictable. Slot machines, roulette, and some popular consumer games fall in that category. Gamification is not used in our classrooms. There are digital game platforms that are in use by staff that fit gamified learning. Kahoot, Quizzes, Bluekit, and Gimkit are some of them. There is usage of those digital tools. We can see it in that tool that I showed you before with charts. However, overall time suggests reasonable utilization at a low total amount of classroom screen time. And before we walk away from screen time, earlier this year, too fast, hang on, back up one. Earlier this year, staff were surveyed across a number of technology concepts. The majority of staff at the elementary level primarily utilize print resources with their students for reading. And at the secondary level, especially the high school, students transition to more digital formats. The benefit of the digital text, it offers assistive technology supports. It's more likely to be up to date and much lighter to carry. Print books are highly circulated in all of our schools, and the librarians work hard to invest in print resources that the students want to read. All right, and you've made it to my last focus point. So this graphic builds on something I shared back in December because I'm laying the groundwork for our next Future Ready Technology Plan, which we'll start crafting next year. This past winter, the federal government, as well as the state of Connecticut, both released new technology plans. And I put those documents in this order because they will impact the development of our next plan as well. Okay, I hope I kept it brief enough for you. I'm looking at, see, did I teach a timing? That's all I have. So thank you so much.
If you don't mind, I just want to say that was extremely well done in that time period. Thank you.
What he didn't tell you was the first run, I said, I need 40 minutes. And he said, no, you got to make it shorter. And I said, okay, 30 minutes. And then today I said, I'm down to 20 minutes. He said, 15, that's all you get.
To keep us focused, I'm going to try to follow the presentation and see if we can bucket our questions by category. So if we start with the focus areas, progress update, sort of what led up to this work. Are there any questions from the board in that area? Okay, on the current software products and usage, do we have questions on that?
Just,
Robin and then Greg.
I do have a question. On the high school usage of ChatGPT, which is basically over 50% of the highest one, which I think is Google. You know, I'm just interested, and I understand this is personal devices, but do we have anything in the district where we're using ChatGPT any kind of a monitoring system for plagiarism, or is this just students that are just using it on their own, or are we using it in an instructional way as well?
So what I can say is that we are working on developing better guidelines for assistive artificial intelligence in the classroom, but you kind of have two components of it. We want to make sure that we're managing academic integrity, right? As well as offering students some guidelines about when it might be appropriate to use tools like ChatGPT. So when I saw ChatGPT stand out there, I was like, okay, well, how long are we actually using it? And what I can say from what I can capture as far as data, it's a minute or two a day on average, but it does suggest that there is use there. Not all of that use. I do believe there are students that are communicating with their teachers when they're using it and have some guidance and green light to do that. I also recognize that there are some tools that sort of capture ChatGPT underneath the background. So there's a tool I introduced this year called School AI, which is designed for use in the schools. It uses ChatGPT underneath the background. So one of the things I'm also trying to still sort of tease out is that ChatGPT captured as part of that usage or not. I don't have a full complete answer at this point. I've talked to the vendor. We're still sort of teasing that out. But more to come. I do believe that next year's work around AI will hopefully illuminate some of that a little bit better.
Thank you.
Can we roll that up and just sort of from a more to come perspective? What does that mean, AI next year's work? What would we be looking for?
Right. So what are we going to produce? So I hope to have kind of like the technology considerations document that's shared in the memo this evening, some sort of document that outlines for staff, some tools that would be acceptable to use in the classroom, that we already have data privacy agreements for, such as School AI, and also give them sort of a sense of how they might structure that use in the classroom. I've done some workshops for staff already this year on AI, where I think it's a fantastic tool in certain scenarios, such as helping students brainstorm. Not that every student should be using it all the time, but I showcased with a few students how it can be really useful if, for example, you're that person that's kind of stuck and trying to come up with the next writing topic, and it might help get you started. But we don't want ChatGPT doing writing for you. Use it as a brainstorming tool is a great use of it, and that's the kind of thing I'd outline.
Mhm. And so that's something you're going to develop and launch next year, or you're developing and launching that over the summer?
I would have to say that would be work for the District Technology Council for next year.
For next year.
Yeah.
Thank you. Greg.
So I'll piggyback on that, and then I have another question. In terms of policing that, like, and policy related
Sure.
to AI use, because I've heard from actual high school students that have said, yeah, I've used ChatGPT to write the last 3 papers
Yep.
that I've written for English class.
Yep.
How do teachers deal with that? Is
So
there an ability?
I do know that staff at the high school have had those hard academic conversations when they become aware. There's a few things that staff are doing. There's a couple of products in use in the district. I'm aware that some staff use Turnitin. I'm also aware that some staff are using this Google extension called Revision History, and it sort of, don't listen to this part. It sort of tells the teacher how many revisions the staff made and gives the staff member a real sense if there's been a big copy and paste job, which is sort of indicative of use of of ChatGPT. The other thing is, especially for staff that work with the same students all the time, you start to sniff it. It starts to smell like not right, and the conversations happen then. But yes, I do know there are academic integrity conversations happening. Are some students still able to make it work for them? Probably sometimes, yes. And I think that's hopefully where we'll be able to frame some of that work better for them next year.
And then my second related question was, just in terms of throughout this presentation, which I thought was really helpful, in terms of like social media and related restrictions on access to websites or on like Chromebooks that people are receiving, are you revisiting that at all? I didn't see that in here. Like I'm thinking about like YouTube, for example, is available to my 5th grader who
Yes.
has Chromebook.
So-
YouTube I view as like one of the worst online websites possible for kids because it has an algorithm that's intended on making the kid continue to click the button to keep watching it for hours and hours on end.
So I have mixed feelings about YouTube on a number of fronts. One of the things I'll say is when I look at the usage of YouTube and average it, again, by per student per day, it's averaging out to 5 minutes per student per day, which, yeah, it looks like a lot in the list, but overall time, it's not a lot. I have cycled in my mind over the years about how I feel about YouTube. One of the things our district doesn't currently have is a software product that offers all the educational streaming video that staff want. I mean, there's been a lot of staff requests for returning to things like Discovery Streaming, which they used to have. Now that content's hosted on platforms like YouTube. So staff do lean on YouTube for some products. There are some things that staff can do to try to steer some of that usage of YouTube around the classroom, and that would be a recommendation I would have, though you can't do this for every YouTube video. You can embed YouTube videos in either Edpuzzle or Google Slides. Doesn't work for all of them, but works for a lot of them, and that kind of locks the student into just viewing that video without being able to transition around. My main personal complaint with YouTube is the release of shorts recently, and I think that's the problem where I don't have a super answer on how else we might approach this in the future, but I think could we, in theory, just completely block off YouTube? Yes, but then we have a giant hole for the content the staff are looking for when they're introducing concepts. That YouTube is the one that really stands out. The rest of the social media tools are blocked KA, and anytime Jeff is made aware of something that's leaking through, he has no hesitation to block anything. I've also had a conversation just last week with a staff member who was asking, she said, listen, my students are asking if I can use this particular game, and I don't see it in that Learn platform. What are your thoughts on it? I said, no, they should not use that. And I said to her, do you want me to have Jeff block it? And he said, no, I got it managed in the classroom. It's okay. I can take care of it here. So I don't know. YouTube is one that I think is worth taking some more time to consider if there are other options. I haven't spoken to any other districts recently on how YouTube is being handled, but I know districts around us have varied on how they've approached it in the past as well, from outright blocks to outright open. So thank you for that.
Dennis, then Dave.
So with this list, and you just mentioned blocking social media K through 8. That's just on district devices, not personal phones.
If a student in fifth grade has brought a cell phone to school or a smartwatch, we have no ability to manage that.
Okay, clear. And with the bring your own device, one of the things that so there's also no, your programs looks, for me, lacks iMessage, WhatsApp, anything, any social media chats like that. Not social media, but just a messaging platform.
So at the high school level?
And when you bring your own device.
When they bring their own device, they certainly have access to that.
And you have
if
no,
they're
you
using
have
their
no
own-
idea how to track that, or not now, you do have an ability to track that or no?
Not if they're using their own, so how the tracking software works that I'm showcasing today is the student has to be logged into their Darien Google account and using the Chrome browser. It's the only way we can make it work. If they're on their personal cell phone and they're not logged into the Darien account, or they're using Safari browser on their school laptop, we don't have a picture of what that looks like. Right now, there is filtered internet, but at the high school, that's a requirement by law. We do filter the internet, but they have a similar level of filtering to the regular staff. So there's the big blocks are blocked, but there's certainly other things.
Dave.
So I had a question before, but I just want to follow up to Dennis's. We can't track like going through the server, main addresses and stuff and figure out that way where people are going.
So not really, not capturing it well. There is capacity in one of the filters that's used called the IBOS filter, but it produces the set of text strings that are absolutely awful. I mean, I looked at one text string just to try to help a librarian at one of the schools figure out what was going on, and it took me, I'm going to be honest, like 20 minutes to troubleshoot 2 minutes of this thing. It's not easy to do that way.
Got it.
Jeff may have a better suggestion.
Okay. And the original question I had is, we had spoken last time, you were going to look at some of the contracts and vendor arrangements we had. And I know we're a very Google heavy place. Do we take a look at our privacy rights or what happens with any of these apps in the Google ecosystem?
Sure. So Google, all the Google App Suite is fully State of Connecticut compliant with the student data privacy agreements. The state managed that particular product, and there's agreement with the state. So we are completely covered there. All that digital library I mentioned before, if you go in, anyone can go in there and they can see what's already approved and the privacy agreements for the vendor specific ones. So for Google's particular, it's a state agreement, but for some other vendors, we have individual agreements.
And I guess the following question would be, and maybe we can see this doc at some point, but just what's the scope of that protection? Like, can they take our stuff, process it, and sift through it and do other things with it? Or is it just that they have to maintain like personal information?
No, actually, school districts have a great deal of protections in the privacy agreement world for how it works. So there's a number of things that are outlined, whether it's has to partially do with how the data is protected. So vendors have a requirement for a cybersecurity standpoint, and if their third-party servers are breached, there's a set of rules on who they contact and in what time frame. There's rules in the agreement about who has access to data, and they're not allowed to use that data for advertising purposes or to sell it to other vendors. There's also rules in there about how the data is removed as far as when we're done with them as a vendor, for example. And also at the end of the day, it points that the ownership, and this is kind of a big point, the ownership of all that data actually is back to the school. So when we use Google's tool as a student, Google doesn't own the student work, which is a little different from your personal accounts.
Got it. Okay. So I get the data protection. I mean, that's pretty standard state of Connecticut stuff. I guess the only other question is, are they allowed to process or use data provided us to improve products or create derivative works?
Yes. Well, I don't know about derivative. So as far as derivative works, my understanding is they cannot use data for derivative works or to train AI models, for example. They cannot use it for that, but they can de-identify the data for product improvements.
Thank you.
Greg.
Oh, I was just going to
I'm
follow
sorry.
up on Dave. Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
Thanks, Greg. I have a question about Go Guardian. It's my understanding via my middle schooler that that's a program that teachers use to close out tabs that are not appropriate tabs to be open. Is that correct?
So Go Guardian can be used in a few different ways.
Okay.
It can be used by the classroom teacher to manage what students are accessing. So a teacher can use it if they are if they observe a student is not on task and they have opened up a different tab, they can use GoGuardian to close that tab. They can use GoGuardian as another layer of filtering. So a staff member does have the capacity to basically block everything and just allow one website through. They can also use it to screen share. So if Billy had made this really cool thing and they wanted to show it to their students, they can use GoGuardian for that. They can also use GoGuardian to help launch a particular tool. So I know at the elementary level, a few staff would like it for that. So let's say we want to get everybody in this one website rather than me showing everybody how to click, I can just launch it for them.
Okay, so it can be used in a positive way. My guess, it's
Yes.
just 419.
Oh, well, yeah, you're a middle
419
schooler.
of 1,044. I was seeing 419 kids doing not great. Like,
Yeah,
not
no.
on task. Okay.
And GoGuardian, actually, it shows up like that partly because it automatically launches whenever the staff member launches it.
Okay.
So it just pops open. You know, also you like look at the middle school and see like Microsoft and you're looking at there, it shows up. Well, it's because every time they launch their Chromebook, we force their email to open in Microsoft.
Okay.
So some things are just like that. I will also mention that staff have been asking for more training on GoGuardian. So the staff that might be listening out, that's something I intend to leverage more next year. So for those that want more training, we'll get it for you.
Greg?
I got my answer
Okay,
from Dave.
great. Questions on the district homepage? Anyone? Staff guidance? Including the PICRAT? Opportunities? Oh, go ahead, Brenna.
I just had a quick question regarding, well, I guess, is there a way that we can get like ad blockers for educators? Because I know that like the main way that you can do this is by purchasing a premium subscription. And obviously that's not really within our means right now, but as for like, I can't tell you how many times like a lesson has been thrown off because the teacher was trying to show us like a YouTube video. And then there was an ad that came on for chocolate or for
Or
car
Verbo?
insurance.
Verbo is, yeah, Verbo.
And you know, it's a joke and the class laughs, but it ultimately at the end it is distracting from learning.
The main advice I would give, so is YouTube has this funny dance with ad blockers as well. My main suggestion actually would be for staff members that want to show videos like that, embed it first in a Google slideshow. Most YouTube videos will let you do that, and they will almost always eliminate the ads when you do it that way. So embedded in slideshow is a trick for getting rid of the ads. So that's something I think I need to educate some people on. But thank you for the suggestion, and I also feel like it is valuable looking into other options we might have for ad blocking.
Thank you. Collaborative technology experiences. Professional, go ahead, Robin.
I just want to compliment you because the initiative here and the partnership that you're talking about with NHRL is really exciting. And the implications of that for our STEM program and robotics K through 12, I think is just really great and puts DHS and our whole district kind of in the forefront of
Yes.
public high schools. So thank you.
Thank you.
Professional learning. All right, district practices and policy. I'm imagining this will be a little bit of a doozy. I think one of the first questions that we have is what you're proposing today looks pretty similar to what we're already doing with teachers needing to enforce or bus drivers needing to enforce. How is it different, what you proposed?
Yeah, so one of the differences, the feedback I've received is that the biggest challenge, especially the elementary level and also the middle school level, is less the cell phones and more the watches. So one of the big outlines here is that we're pushing all devices to the backpack. The other thing that needs to happen is real consistent enforcement. And I feel confident saying that if we start the school year strong and send a message and all teachers have the same message consistently across all the buildings, as well as families are supportive of this, I think we'll be in great shape. Could I be wrong? Sure, I could be. And also, I think this is something we need to continue to evaluate. We have looked at products that are put forward for some of this purpose. And at this point in time, I am leaning on trusting the students. I believe the vast majority are already easily ready to comply and won't need an additional product that will manage that device for them.
Okay, other questions in this category? Robin?
So kind of following up on that, especially in middle school, because I know the hallways, the bathrooms, the kind of unsupervised areas are where I think some of the issues have been happening, not like when they're in the classroom and everybody, their phone is in the backpack.
Yes.
So how would this be different than what we currently have? Because I think that has been an issue.
Enforcement is going to be the key part here. We want everybody to be on the same page and take a real proactive approach, especially at the start of the school year, especially at the middle school. In my mind, I see this as a zero tolerance situation. So anybody that sees any student with a device, that device goes to the office and a parent comes pick it up. That's the big difference. And so if we start the school year that way, I believe it'll be effective.
And then follow up, like the Yonder kind of packs, like
Sure.
how much would that cost?
Sure.
If we did go down that route?
Sure. So right now, about 2,000 school districts around the 2,000 schools around the country and 30 in Connecticut are using Yonder bags. Of those 30 in Connecticut, about half of them are high schools, the other half are middle schools. I had the opportunity to speak both as a sales rep with Yonder as well as a middle school that's currently using Yonder bags. The Yonder bag cost is $30 per student, and that is not including staffing. So I wasn't sure what the staffing would look like. So when I spoke to the principal of Torrington Middle School, it's similar size middle school we have in Darien with about 1,000 students. They need 2 staff members per entrance in the morning and 1 staff member per exit. So there's an additional staffing leverage there. It also does create kind of a scenario of arrival where it takes some work to move the students through. And the principal also made a key point to me in that it wasn't just the Yonder bags that makes a difference for her. It was their discipline approach, and they're incredibly restrictive. So when I say zero tolerance, this is like negative tolerance. I mean, it gets really strict very quickly, and they have an escalating series of consequences for violations. And I think she actually felt it was that escalation that was more effective than the Yonder bags.
So there are a number of districts around us, New Canaan, Wilton, Weston. They're all looking at this, either one meeting ahead of us, or actually, I think the board has done this very thoughtfully and deliberating over time, and what Tim has done from the fall. I had a chance to do a focus group with some kids in the middle school, and this idea of the Yonder bags, like it's the same type of thing, like your garment, you deactivate the wee button type thing.
Security tag.
It's just a security tag type thing. To be walking around with those, like think of a middle schooler who's got a pair of pants on, he or she would end up having a Yonder bag, which is like I guess a purse size type thing you put the phone in. I don't think it's necessary, and it's not an avenue I want to go down to start with. If the other districts around us want to play it out, they can have at it, and maybe we can learn from them if they want to do that. But I want to trust the kids. I want to collaborate with the parents. We want to partner with the parents. We want to provide education about this and make it a community effort to roll out what we're rolling out. But I actually don't think it's necessary. Collectively, we don't think it's necessary to have the underbags. Anyway, I'll leave it at that, just to start with, at least.
John?
So I had the opportunity to listen to many podcasts earlier this year, and this was one of them. And one of the key points the author made in this interview was it's got to be a partnership between the districts and the parents, and everybody's got to buy into this concept. So I think it's a brilliant idea. It's certainly impacting not only our kids, but kids throughout the country and beyond. I guess my question is, in order to make this a successful partnership, how do we educate parents to do their duty and take their responsibility and kind of changing the whole culture? I mean, this is a cultural change.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. And, kind of switch it from, I need that phone because my friend has it, to, well, I don't want to touch that phone because my friends don't have it.
Right. So as far as, I mentioned earlier, like there's 3 parties here that have a role in this: the students, the staff, and the parents, too, especially to your point. And I'm hoping families that have the opportunity will see the Max Stossel presentation in the fall. So I don't have the magic answer for every situation scenario, but we'll need to be enforcing at the school level, and parents will need to be supportive of that enforcement when there's challenges. But also there are recommendations out there that parents might look to consider. So instead of a smartphone. There are Max Stossel and others that talk about different types of devices that still provide the communication tool for families without all the risk of the social media components. That's something I think families should look at. I don't necessarily have one I'd recommend. We have organizations in Darien that are also, I think, advocating and pushing the message forward on that. As far as the messaging of our new guidelines at the handbook level for students K-8 next year, we're hearing it tonight. I know Dr. Adley is going to mention things in his previous memos out, but the principals are on board and they are ready to educate their families as well.
And just a quick follow-up. I mean, as a board, let's not let, a plan for perfect execution get in the way of a great intention and plan. And we can pivot and make changes. You're talking about the yonder bags and I think that's, let's not focus on the minutia, start to implement something and learn as we implement.
I will say that we tried to be reasonable and responsive to some concerns, which might be, for instance, middle school kids pick up, so on and so forth. The elementary school, we do have a dismissal manager or a new system that we're putting in place. I will say this, I don't believe, and I think the research for the most part plays this out, it's not necessary for safety emergency situations during the day. We will take care of that as a staff. That's why we have emergency planning. And in our emergency book isn't all kids pull out their cell phones. That doesn't necessarily help the situation, and it's certainly not necessary for that. So I just wanted to put that honestly just on the table. There's not a necessity actually for that particular purpose. So hopefully we can partner with the parents and, well, we will partner with the parents and the rule out.
I actually think I read The Anxious Generation. I think he talked specifically to security, if I'm remembering where I read it.
Yes, he
and
does.
said
Yeah.
that actually you actually want somebody else pick this up, but you actually want the kid listening to the adult in the room,
Right.
not the adult on the other end of the phone. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Sarah?
So building off of John's point, I think the parents are going to be the ones that I think are going to be the biggest issue with this. I think that there are some parents that have, really are very comfortable with this, or other parents that are going to be very uncomfortable with this. And we are all very used to able to communicate with a kid like this. And I think it's going to be a huge culture change. And I think the more that we can communicate that, the more repetitive we can be, the sooner it can happen. I think it's going to be a big jump for some parents to be able to rip the Band-Aid and not be able to contact their kids from 9 to 3 or whatever it is. I think it's going to be really hard for some. So I don't know how we handle that, but I can imagine that there are some that are not going to be in favor of this. I'm not one of them, just saying.
Gregan and Julie?
Thanks. So just a couple points and observations. One is, I think in terms of the policy, I definitely would have liked to see it closer to what New Canaan seems to be doing, which goes all the way through high school, just in terms of some of their restrictions. I know we've got the issue with bring your own device, which we're going to work through, but I think just for me, like that would make a little bit more sense. In terms of thinking about like the impact on other kids, to what Sarah was just alluding to, and the communication with parents, I think that that's absolutely critical. Having something that's very clearly communicated to the parents in terms of what this policy is, what the ramifications are, what it's going to mean to them, and not be buried in like one of the Friday emails that has a million other things in it. I think it's going to be critical to make sure that parents understand what the ramifications are. And I think in terms of like, we can leverage some of the stuff that's being pushed down to us by the state. I mean, 2 weeks ago, we heard about the new language that's in the bullying I'll read it. It says behavior that negatively impacts school climate or interferes or is at risk of interfering with the learning or safety of a student or the safety of a school employee. And to me, the presence of a device automatically interferes with the learning of other students, especially if your parents are calling you in the middle of class. So I think we can leverage some of that stuff. And I do think it's important that the communication is critical.
Greg, when you say what New Canaan is doing, what do you mean?
In the other document, the more detailed one, it talked about what some of the other districts were doing. And so in that one, it says there's no devices whatsoever allowed in elementary school, which I'm surprised that any device outside of maybe one used for medical reasons would be permitted on grounds at an elementary school. That seems strange to me to have like a smartphone in a second grader's hand. Secondly, like the high school thing, I think in middle school as well on the buses. So our policy says that students can have the phones on the buses. For me, as a parent who has my kid ride the bus, there's a reason why I have my kid ride the bus. In middle school, she does not have the cell phone for a reason. The purpose of that is for her to actually get social interaction with her other peers during that bus ride to school. The fact that phones are actually allowed on the bus takes that away from her experience. So it's detracting from some of the social elements that we're trying to get from sending the kid to the school through the bus. And I think that that's an impactful, when we talk about mental health, there you go. You're not interacting with your peers during the critical part of the day when you're going to school or coming home from school. So small things like that I think are important. So I would say it seems like New Canaan doesn't allow them on the bus, or it was hard to tell from what was written, but it doesn't seem like they allow the middle schools. And then the high school point as well.
Julie.
Thank you. Thank you for all this great information. As a couple of people have said, I do think that being as clear and concise and simple with the rules is the easiest way to have people follow them. I think a lot of people will be thrilled that they're able to say it's just, it is what it is. And I think that for, many, many generations, people were not able to contact their children during the school day unless there were an emergency or something came up and there's still a way to get a message to them. So I think that would be welcome in the long run. My question is the school bus. Who enforces elementary not using if they have a device that they haven't been allowed access to during the school day? The bus doesn't really have someone except for the person who's driving the bus.
I will be honest, the bus driver would be impossible for the bus driver to drive the bus and also manage devices at the elementary level or the middle school level. We are expecting compliance. And I imagine if there is an issue on the bus driver will report that to the administrators. The administrators will take that up as a task to have a conversation with the families. But yeah, we don't want them on the bus, especially the elementary level, especially for the range of ages at the elementary level. In kindergarten to fifth grade is quite the broad range.
Greg.
So at the elementary school level, why not just say no devices allowed on grounds?
So the term ban has come up quite a bit in the media and a lot of articles. School devices are banned. I don't know the reality of that word. My impression of that word is it wouldn't be allowed on campus. I don't know what it would look like to do backpack checks every day at the front door to look in backpacks for devices to make sure they're not on campus. So essentially what we're asking is that students, they put them away when they come on campus, it stays in the backpack all day, and they take it out when they exit the campus. And that honestly is how lots of districts that use the word ban are essentially running it. I don't know if I'm addressing your thought as far as what you're saying is a total devices stay at home. And I think that's the message that I'm hoping families will start to take is, hey, it's going to be in your backpack all day anyway. Well, why take the risk of getting it broken by your backpack and just leave it at home?
Why not just be more direct? If the purpose is to not let them bring it to school, why not just say, don't bring it to school? Parents are going to have a tough time reading between the lines.
I don't know how we, at the end of the day, would enforce that to that level. I just don't really have a picture of what that would look like.
It's Dennis and Dave.
I think Brianna.
Oh, I'm sorry, Brianna, I didn't see you.
I think just to qualify 2 points, I think that as in terms with phones on the buses, I think kids are going to be social no matter what. And I think it's not as drastic of an argument as, oh, if they have phones, they're not going to be getting any socialization. I remember, riding the bus home from middle school, pre-COVID, of course, and using the phones as an opportunity to socialize, to bond with people. There were these girls that would sit in the front and film TikToks with each other, like the whole way there. And we would use like the social media filters and things like that. And we'd be discussing things that we saw in a group chat and things like that. And like everyone was saying, it is, cultural evolution. And what I don't think we want to be doing is not only like stigmatizing the phones, but like glorifying them and saying like, oh, this is illegal, because then that's going to make, in terms of like enforcing the ban, that's going to make students want to rebel even more. That's going to make students want to take out their phone. I'm disobeying things. And additionally, like, we don't want them to feel like afraid of the phones because it's a part of our culture now. And it's so casual that we just don't want to, give them a wrong idea. We want, I think, to show them this is a part of our lives, but this is not something that we want, in school, I guess.
Thank you so much. Dennis?
Yeah, for me, like I'm torn on this subject because it feels like we're now being asked to parent children. And I know we have to do that at some point, but at some point, parents need to parent their children and not purchase devices which are not recommended for kids under 10 or 12 and so on. I also think that education, schools exist to educate. They're not here to punish. And this goes back to when we had this whole thing on commitment and we had policies that if you drank, then you get expelled, or you don't get expelled, you get banned from your team, you can't be a captain. And when Dr. Brenner was the superintendent, his point was we need to educate. And that's now why we have the educational meetings before school, because schools are not in the discipline business. We're in the education business. And it feels like we're going into the discipline business of how we're going to run this program. Look, I'm happy to set a policy so we can be the bad guys. So maybe that helps parents and say, schools don't allow it, you can't use it. Leave it home. That's fine. I'm happy to do that. But beyond that, I'm not sure that's our purview.
So there are no first offenses, second offenses, third offenses, and there's no developmental discipline. In fact, they're trying to stay away from the discipline. I think the message to the elementary schools is, look, you don't need them in school. You actually shouldn't have them in school. Right? There's no need for instruction or anything else. I think there's a tip of the hat to the parents for some reason they have it. Right? I know it's sort of like a country. It's just trying to thread the needle a little bit. But I think the fundamental message is we do not believe you need them. We don't believe that you be in school, period. And most certainly, if they happen to be in school, well, you're going to have to come pick it up at some point. Right? I mean, I think we're just trying to thread the needle a bit with parents initially. But the message is we don't believe that they're needed in school and shouldn't be in school. That will be the message. And I think it just takes a bit of time to participate in that discussion with that message.
Dave, you're up.
But actually, Greg, that's actually what New Canaan is doing in their elementary school. It's just the same type of thing.
If I could just add to what Dr. Adley is saying in particular about New Canaan, while they've long had that in their handbook, elementary students should not bring the cell phones or smart devices to school. The fact of the matter is some are. We've talked to administration there, but they're off, they're away in their bags. And when they're taken out, the administration and the school will work with the parent and the child about how that's not supposed to be happening. So that when you make, I think Brenna said it very articulately, when you kind of make a zero tolerance, there are no exceptions, whether it's students or parents who for some reason feel otherwise, sometimes those rules are then broken in school. And that also puts parents in a very difficult situation with their children. So as Dr. Adley said, we're trying to thread the needle there and work on education and using trust and partnering with families.
Dave. Okay. Right. Anything else on cell phone use, screen time, that category? Okay. Swan, yeah.
I can't speak to elementary school because when I was in elementary school, like none of us dreamed of having smartphones. But but middle school specifically, I remember we weren't allowed to have them in our hands. They had to be in our lockers, and it was a similar thing. Like if you're seen with it, you had a talking to. But I agree with having a no tolerance policy just because it's something that students will be taking more seriously. Like we had for some time we had to bring them into a classroom and put them at the front, and then all you had to say was, oh, I left it at home. And then if your teacher caught you with it, like the most you're going to get is like a slap on the wrist. And that same student's going to do that again the next day. I'm saying this as someone who fully did like say that at some point and got away with it. So I'm saying that if it is a bigger deal, if you make it a bigger deal, students are going to take it more seriously. So I might be playing for the wrong side here, but yeah.
That's an honest answer, Swahan. The other piece is other school districts who have these bans, many of them are using the progressive discipline approach. So, on the third offense, some school districts are actually suspending children, which removes them from the opportunity to learn. So to Mr. Maroney's comments, the word discipline actually means to teach. And so we want to, as Dr. Adley said, avoid that approach and really focus on the education and partnership.
All right, Tim, thank you so very much. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
We look forward to hearing
Told you I should have
more.
made it 40 minutes.
Jill, just one last thing.
Yes, Katie.
I think this is more probably a question for you, Dr. Adley, and Tim, thank you so much. This was my second time with your presentation and I enjoyed it both times.
Thank you.
To the conversation about punitive measures and academic integrity and sort of, looking for instances where they have, I'd love to see how our conversation can grow to more proactive, preemptive. What is driving students to feel that they need to use ChatGPT or other such software? What can we do for students to feel good about academic integrity and not want to, kind of use those shortcuts? So I think that that's a conversation that we need to have as well, not just focusing it on the technology, but what the drivers are internally within our students.
Jill.
Yes,
Just one, this is kind of building on what Katie's saying too, just in terms of so I'm thinking about the high school in particular, and we're not doing any kind of enforcement here. I understand they bring your own device, but I think it could be interesting in terms of trying to make sure that students aren't on their phones, engaging them, and maybe with our instruction in class, trying to make it more interactive. So students are having discourse with each other and interacting with each other so that they're not basically using technology so much, that they're looking at a phone or a computer screen. And so I think there are things you can do. And this also is kind of from a mental health standpoint too. It's a social interaction and ability to communicate with others that I think has unfortunately fallen off a little bit. And so to the extent that we can try during our instructional time and the hours in school to encourage that kind of discourse, not only in the classroom, but also in the cafeteria, in the hallway. So kids aren't looking at a phone as they're walking through the hallway in high school, for instance, and actually having conversations. So I think that would go a long way toward addressing some of the mental health things, the bullying, 50% of it is online right now. So that's an issue. Just wanted to make a comment about that.
Yeah, thank you both. Dave.
Going to piggyback a little bit on something Katie said, and it brought me back to a time when solar powered calculators were going to ruin the instruction of mathematics forever and were banned. Obviously, that's changed a little bit. When we think about ChatGPT, I'm curious not just who's using it and why they're using the shortcut, but there was an article in the journal a couple of months ago about a lot of business schools are giving courses in AI and teaching executives how to use it and how to harness that. I'm not sure what the roadmap is for that as we look at it, other than just usage. But if we are going to have a conversation on that, would love to know how we're going to incorporate this technology to promote excellence, not just shortcuts.
Right.
Yeah, agreed. So I
Sorry, the important point, certainly for the middle school, we'll continue to discuss at the high school level, but the middle school, particularly at lunchtime and recess time and time between classes, should be interaction time. Actually, going to these concerts, right, over at the high school, first thing parents do and we do is pull out our phone. Like, we don't even matter what it is. Like, let's take pictures. We're taping the thing, right? I mean, it's distracting to the people beside you, in front of you, behind you. They don't have a chat. I mean, there's a lot of education that we can do and modeling for ourselves and our kids that would be helpful, I think.
Thank you. Greg.
Actually, you just reminded me of another question I had. The action or policy, is there anything around the school sponsored events? You mentioned like dances and things like that. Like, I know that a lot of kids now just have their phone out the whole time, videoing or whatever. I feel like we're one video away from being really at risk as a district, but is it just specific to just in the school building, or is there?
Currently, that's the way the policy has been developed.
During the school day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also say that just to point out, we have at the middle school anonymous alerts that requires the use of it doesn't really require the use of a phone, but in theory it sort of does, right? They have their laptops that they can use, but eventually, remember the purpose of anonymous alerts, it would be to go beyond the school day a little bit, right? So if students had to report anything outside the school day.
So I think I can say that the board is really excited about this topic and excited to continue to engage with you as you move forward.
Thank you.
You know, certainly we're interested from a policy perspective and how we're involved. We're interested in what the communication pathways look like and how we can support them. We're definitely interested in how it augments our curriculum, where we do things to better support teachers and learning, and of course, where we can spend more money and spend less money. So if you would please plan to continue to engage with us, that's a lot of different ways that you're dovetailing with our conversation. We're excited to be a part of it.
Great.
So
Thank you. I look forward to it. Appreciate it.
thank you.
All right. Have a great-
Okay. Discussion and possible action on the district's educator and leader evaluation and support plan. Marge and Amy.
So as we discussed with the board in January, the guidelines for the educator and leader evaluation and support plans have changed again. Tonight, Dr. Fedigan, Barry Palmer, the president of the DEA, and I will take you on a very quick overview of the work that's done so far. The law also requires that the Board of Education adopt the plan so that then we can submit it to the state for approval. We did follow in many respects the state plan, but we made it our own. The plan is required to be the result of a consensus between the local bargaining unit and the administration and the board, and we did come to consensus. You can see we drafted a vision statement where we're all in agreement that this plan should strive to empower the growth of our educators because this will have the greatest impact on our students. There were about 45 of us, administrators and teachers from all subject matters and all levels that met monthly. The committees that you see there, goal setting forums, rubric, observation, and summative and support met more often than that. So this was a real true working committee. And this is what we did.
So the biggest change I think for the board to know about is the difference in, we used to have a rubric, which was you got a 1, 2, 3, or 4 score on a bunch of different domains and indicators that have to do with your instructional practice. And we're shifting from that to a single point competency rubric, which is more, I guess the easiest way to explain it is, here's the expectation of what quality instruction looks like. And there's 26 indicators, I think 25 we landed on eventually. And using those after a classroom observation as a discussion point between evaluator and teacher. Marge would tell you the scoring of 1, 2, 3, 4, where I know it gives us nice data, wasn't really useful data. I don't think any teacher was ever counseled out because of their scores on the rubric. Most of the time, the questions I got were more like, why is this a 3 and not a 4, right? And so the scores really got in the way of the professional conversation. So I think that's a change that we're all excited about. I also just want to thank Dr. Fedigan and Marge. We really did work collaboratively, teachers, administrators, 45 people coming once a month and then meeting in between. It was a labor of love. And I think, so I appreciate our partnership on that.
We agree, Barry. For me, being new to the district, it was a wonderful opportunity to get to know our staff across the buildings and across all departments. And I think in this case, this is one of those parts of our work where the product is important. It's important to put before the board for your consideration. It needs to be obviously approved by the state ultimately. But even more important than this product is the process that we engaged in. Our staff commented throughout that this was really an exercise in professional learning. It was an opportunity for preschool really through grade 12 staff to be talking about high quality instructional practices, to be talking about our teaching and learning principles, and to really be grappling with some ideas that we should be thinking about when we talk about teaching practice and learning practice and leading practice, by the way. So next steps with the plan will include working together as a PDEC committee. I've had several emails already from members of our team who would like to engage in developing professional learning resources and materials so that we can ensure consistent implementation across the district. Something that will be really important as well will be the calibration of how we implement the plan and then ongoing support for progress monitoring about implementation. PDEC, this is one function of PDEC to develop a plan, but really the purpose of PDEC is much more grand than that. PDEC should be thinking about professional development and really, I prefer to say professional learning throughout the year. They should be thinking about as a body, feedback, actually needs assessment. All of these pieces are critical and important to our next level of work. And I do anticipate that when we're engaging in professional learning for administrators in the summer prior to coming back to school, that what they experience will be the result of PDEC members collaborating together to generate that and actually to co-facilitate that during our administrators retreat in August. And that will be the first time I think that has ever happened, that members of the teaching team and administrative team are coming together to develop that kind of professional learning opportunity and implement it together as well. So we're looking forward to that.
So the actual plans were linked in the memo that we provided to the board. This work, like all the work we do, is aligned with our mission, vision, and strategic plan and vision of the graduate. And now if you have any questions.
Okay, I'll open it to board questions. Thank all of you for the work. Appreciate it. Robin.
Just a question, and thank you for the presentation. The one major question I have, I guess, Barry, when you're talking about the 25 different indicators, and now we measure all of those 25 different indicators based on a single point competency. I'm just wondering, if you're an evaluator, how do you do that in a single point encompassing 25 things as opposed to, going one by one and having, a 4-point score like we do with performance evaluations, for example? I'm just interested how it would work.
Every lesson's different. And so when an evaluator goes into a classroom, they're not going to be expecting to see all 25 indicators in one lesson. So it's kind of to capture the entire year. And you'll notice evaluators working with teachers, and granted, I've never been an evaluator, but in my experience, you do touch on most of the areas of the rubric throughout the year. And where there's areas of concern or areas for growth, you just use that indicator. The evaluator would use that to start a conversation with the teacher. Well, how do you think you did on this? And, see if the teacher's reflectiveness, if they picked up on where there's an area of growth or not. So you don't need a score really to address an area of growth.
I can just add one other piece. Other parts of this plan include goal setting, mid-year conversations and end-of-year conversations, and summative discussions. So and reviews of practice. So there are ultimately many opportunities outside of the finite observations to support educator growth for teachers and leaders.
Okay, thank you.
So while I appreciate that we have to do this work because the state says so, I'm also sensitive to the fact that we have talked about the load on teachers and we've talked about the load on administrators. Is there anything that has come out of this work that maybe makes any of this any less onerous or you've talked about a little more impactful, but more meaningful in terms of better work for all of us?
I think there was a common understanding that the plan we had in place wasn't working.
Okay.
So I think there will be motivation from both administrators and teachers for a change. I think Dr. Fettigan always says, make the plan work for us, not we're working for the plan. And I think that really did help drive our work. That said, it's going to be another thing that we're going to have to adjust to. But I think the changes, the spirit behind the changes, even coming from the state level, is less time for teachers just justifying their job. Right? One teacher once told me, I do more work trying to keep my job than actually doing my job. Right? And so they've really cut down on a lot of that accountability, and it's much more focused on admin getting into our classrooms, seeing how we're teaching and seeing what how we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thank you. Amy, anything you want to add? Or any of you on behalf of?
I would just add one other piece. We're really proud and grateful for the work of all of the staff on this committee. And another feature that I think we should be proud of is the time the committee spent on thinking about the work of our related service providers. Those are people who are special educators, who are outside of the typical role of a classroom teacher. And that's work that they were very committed to and something we were able to accomplish with the plan. And this is just when you think you're done, you've only just begun. This is something that we need to continue to tend to and evolve and grow with as a district.
And just to add to what Amy's saying, unrelated service providers, speech therapists were participated, special education teachers, and Scott Ward, dual hat of both as an administrator and as a school psychologist.
Okay.
So we had good representation,
Okay,
K through 12, or actually ELP through 12.
Through 12.
Laura was part of it.
great. Thank you. Okay. What else? All right. With that, may I have a motion to approve the proposed district's educator and leader evaluation and support plan? Dennis, seconded by John. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Barry, Marge, and Amy, thank you for the work.
Let's wish Denny the Maronis a happy 30th as he departs.
Happy 30th.
Enjoy.
Presentation of the Tri-State Visual and Performing Arts Consultancy Report. Amy and Colleen.
Thank you.
Hello,
Tonight we have Mrs. Thompson with us, Director for Music, and we did have a very robust discussion at the level of curriculum committee regarding our tri-state visit. And Colleen will give us an overview of that, and we'll be happy to take questions after.
So this will just be a quick summary. So as you may know, I've presented a few times previously that the Tri-State Consortium is a professional network of 57 public school districts in Connecticut, New Jersey, and New York, and they advance student performance through a continuous improvement process. So the Tri-State process involves a self-study by member districts and a triennial cycle of review by teams of fellow educators whose districts also belong to the consortium. So they serve as critical friends. So in January and early February, we hosted a 14-member visit team, and they included teachers, administrators, arts coordinators from Connecticut, New Jersey, and New York. We hosted them in the Little Theater at the high school. And we used a consultancy model, which is a 3-day process that provides the member district with feedback based on a set of essential questions posed by the district. And our visit was a review of our visual and performing arts department. So what we did is we, as a team, so I'm here to represent the whole team. Jacqueline Samus did a huge amount of work on this for the visual arts, and we had all of our educators in art, music, and theater provided evidence and contributed to this process. So they reviewed our evidence, and we housed that on a website that we created especially for the event, which we it was really a really helpful process, because I know when you're forced to actually quantify and actually look back at all of the things that you're doing, we are really happy with all of what we collected to kind of celebrate the work that our students have been doing in the visual and performing arts. So they provided us with a report that was just organized around our essential questions. So this is what we came into looking to, we came into the process posing these questions. To what extent does the Darien Public Schools provide access to a cohesive, innovative arts education that prepares all students today to thrive in a changing world tomorrow? So the team looked at that question and reviewed all of our evidence, a lot of really structural evidence there in terms of schedules and budgets and stuff like that. To what extent does the Darien Public Schools provide enhanced experiences for students who demonstrate exceptional gifts and talents in the arts? So this gave us an opportunity to talk about some of the things that we do for our more advanced and interested artists and musicians, and how we encourage them to further their gifts and talents in the arts. And then how do arts offerings align with the competencies of the vision of the graduate? And that was a really nice one to get into, especially as the vision of the graduate has been, rolled out district-wide, but has been really spoken more about at the high school level. So this was an opportunity for us to look at the vision of the graduate K-8 and look at the competencies that the arts have kind of a unique role in to just kind of round out our student experience. And then the consortium came back with some commendations and recommendations based on, I should say, considerations based on their own indicators. And that was around curriculum and instruction, around equitable support for student needs, and shared vision and environment for change. So the full report is linked here, and that kind of gives you an overview of how the report is organized. They were very thoughtful in their approach with us and gave us some really, really great things to think about. And so those commendations and considerations will be used to guide our next level of work for pre-K through 12 art, music, and theater curricular and co-curricular instruction and programming. Yeah, and I just had one last slide if you just want to, look at that and read it. I really liked the idea of, that we're all going through a lot. We're all working forward as a district, and they were really complimentary of our degree of professionalism, the teacher's degree of professionalism, and how well the community, parents, students, Board of Ed members interacted with them in their journey toward understanding our performing arts department better.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Sarah?
Thank you, Colleen. And we had a much more robust conversation about this in our curriculum committee meeting. So thank you for all that work that you did a few weeks ago. If you can just summarize, quickly going forward, what do you think, if you could pick the top 2 things that you going forward are interested in examining further?
Brought up my full report just in case. I thought this might come up. Yeah, I think some of the things that came up were just talking about student access to the visual and performing arts. As when we're in a district that has so many opportunities for students, we talk a lot about STEM and we talk about lots of opportunities, just making sure that there are pathways and entry points for students who want to excel and continue their study in the visual and performing arts. And so they talked about that, just kind of tracking the types of students who are taking our classes to make sure that we are aware of whether we have a variety of students represented. They were very complimentary of our inclusion of all students, but just a reminder to make sure that we're not just, that we're really looking into it more carefully and collecting data points. One of the cool things they talked about, we're talking about AI at the table, artificial intelligence when it comes to music and visual art. If you think about, you can pretty much type a song prompt into AI right now, and they can provide you with an original song based on any topic, and digital art. And so that's really going to prompt our next level of work in working with Tim and other consultants on how do we engage with AI. So I thought that was an interesting point.
As you talk about moving forward, Colleen, what is your timeline? What are you thinking about? What is moving forward in terms of next steps?
I think, a lot of it is just embedded into the work. I'm looking forward to the next professional learning opportunities that we have as a visual and performing arts department, really coming back and really looking at the report together. I think I mentioned this in the curriculum committee. Timing wise, we got this report in February and we won't have another professional learning day until August. So, the commendations and recommendations we got in the report are really going to help us guide our work and supporting students and just innovation and the next level of just help us focus on what does it mean to be a visual and performing arts department, and how do we best use that to influence student learning.
Given the level of work, I think I just would like to say, I think the board would like to see at some point sort of here's what we came up with, here's how we're moving forward. This is the plan that we put in place. Again, not that it has to be specific and concrete, but this was an important scope of work. So it'd be nice to see specifically what you decide to do. Okay, Robin.
And we did touch on this in the curriculum committee, but the work you did on creating the websites with the music department, the art department, I think is fantastic because it showcases literally like K through 12 that you might only see at the library or at, a bagel store in Darien at a certain finite point in time. And to the extent that we are trying to reinvigorate the website as part of our communications plan, I just think it's a great opportunity as we go forward to try to think about how we can continue to do something like that in the future, and, to showcase student work and everything that they're doing and everything you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, that'll be a definite point of action, for sure.
One other just quick comment, really, something else in the report was around pre-K. And so one of the things we're really excited about is thinking about the opportunities for our ELP learners to engage in art experiences. And especially when we think about play-based learning, there will be natural opportunities to embed some of these considerations into our work in that area with curriculum.
And another one, well, you don't have to take all of them, right? Because it's a collaborative process, was to reflect some of the recommendations, commendations in the strategic plan. So that will bring that forward.
Okay, thank you. Who else? Katie?
Thank you, Colleen, again for doing this. I just wanted to reiterate to the board that I think it's really helpful to look back at the full report or even just the presentation that was given at the curriculum committee. The recommendations that were in here, a lot of the things that were written in here, quite interestingly, have come up during our budget discussions. So I think that they're definitely of topical interest to the board. Things like balance between how much music versus art is offered. Pathways were mentioned, AI was mentioned. The rigor of the courses, the ways that kids can get into AP, and even, whether or not the timing of extracurricular clubs and if that limits participation with before and after. So I would highly encourage any board member who hasn't had a chance to see that presentation from the curriculum committee. It's very digestible the way you put the commendations and the recommendations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Colleen. We appreciate it. All right. Discussion and possible action on proposed changes to 2024-2025 school district calendar. Alan.
So these are some revised changes to the already approved Board of Education calendar for 24-25. The changes are a shift in elementary conferences from December to October, a day before Thanksgiving. So this is a full day off instead of an early release half day. Staff Professional Development Day, there should have been an extra date in January as a standard practice, so that one was just added in. Shift in staff February Professional Development Day to the after the February recess as opposed to before it. And then the end of school changed because we added basically we needed to add a day of school because of the Thanksgiving, and we needed to add a day of school because of the Professional Development Day. So that pushed it out a little bit. So the major changes were the conferences, the half day on Thanksgiving, right? Just be the day before Thanksgiving, and then the additional Professional Development Day. All the PLC days are all the same. You'll see there's a different, Cassie has worked up a different format as you compare the two. And we're happy to.
I'll open it to questions, but maybe you could just explain to us why you thought of making particularly the shifts like the Thanksgiving in February.
So the February, sorry, did you say the conferences, right, or February?
Well, actually, anything on here that
So
requires a
the
why.
conferences also was, we did have in the last teachers agreement that we would sit down and work with our teachers on some of the conferences and sort of the report cards and so on. So this is the first part of that. That's a recommendation that came from the group. I think the general consensus was it just takes too long to get to December to have conferences for, although it's not precluded, never is precluded, but it's just too long to wait until December. So that was the first one. The day before Thanksgiving was a request from our staff, actually, in terms of that this would be a helpful thing, but just arbitrarily a little bit without doing specific numbers. Attendance on that day is not completely the best, but nonetheless, this was a staff morale thing, something that we felt would be helpful. The teachers actually would be working an extra half day, so to speak, because it would be replaced by a full day. The Professional Development Day in February, I had my differences with this one, but I'll let my professional development person here convince us of why it's better after the recess.
So, the challenge to having the day after the recesses will have to be making sure that we're prepared with our intentional plans even earlier in the school year, but that's part of our agenda anyway in the year ahead. Fridays tend to be, I think I would say that's another kind of morale issue with the staff. Fridays, everyone else is leaving to go on vacation, and that's not the best day for new learning for our staff. We'll just say that. So we want to make sure, especially given the fact that we only have really 6 days, because one of the days, the 7th, is the teacher work day in August. We really have to think about how to maximize and optimize our time. So the feeling is that will better serve our needs.
I will say that this is one, I will say this is one wee area where we can consider at no expense and to listen to the teachers and the staff as to kind of their input into the calendar.
Julie?
Thank you. And I like that. I think that's a very good point. My concern is this is sort of soon. And for people who travel, who could have already planned travel based on the previously approved calendar, that day could be tricky to switch the Friday to the Monday. I haven't booked any tickets, but there are people who can and do far in advance. So I'm not sure what we do about that.
What's our efforts?
There've definitely been tickets purchased, but I think it's a small amount.
Robin.
A couple questions, just one on Julie's point. There are also like sports and kind of teams and things that involve multiple schools that schedule like an athletic kind of thing during that February break that, I think use that time as a travel day and then it starts on that Saturday, but that maybe is a small percentage of people. The question I had also was about the first day of school and why you're changing it to a half day.
It's not.
It says early dismissal, the August day is the star, August 28.
I think the purple is early dismissal.
Star is denoting that it's first.
This one, sorry?
The star is
Did I get
denoting that
that
it's
wrong?
the first day.
Yeah.
It says in the key, it says early dismissal
Yeah,
star. Is that wrong?
The dark purple is the early.
I printed it in black and white, so maybe my.
Yeah, it's the black and white, yeah.
It's all good. Okay, thank you.
I have to, who pumped this up? Who did that? Was that? Yeah, what's up?
Sarah.
Can you remind me the conference? I am definitely in support of moving the elementary school conferences earlier, and it's been a few years since I've had an elementary school student. Can you remind me the cycle of conferences versus report cards and where the narratives fall? So if there's a conference in October, will there be a narrative in December, or how? I know we were talking about redoing the report cards, so just curious where the feedback will be.
So as Dr. Adley mentioned, that's part of the conversation with the committee, not only looking at the content of the report cards, but the timeline. Currently now, I think the primary reason why the district has postponed the conferences to December is waiting for teachers and parents to have the narrative in hand. I would say that December is far too long to wait for a formal opportunity for parents to be in the classrooms. There's an opportunity, of course, at open house and other opportunities throughout the year, but that sit down one-on-one opportunity to hear about your child at the beginning of the year, closer to the beginning, and how they're settling in is important. So we will likely we'll engage the staff in looking at the timeline to accompany that. But as Dr. Adley mentioned, it doesn't preclude parents from, coming in at any other time. And there should be a no surprise party policy when it comes to report cards or narratives, ELP through grade 12.
Yeah, okay.
Katie.
Thank you. Amy, I just wanted to say thank you. Moving those conference times has been in discussion, ever since I had my first one in that division for all the reasons that you just said. And I just wanted to say that I'm really excited. These changes combined with the pilot that we're doing in the literacy, I think could really improve outcomes for students. Because exactly what you said, and our teachers are wonderful about being available. They really are. However, when we have young kids and you have a December conference, and that's the first time that someone really feels like they have an opportunity to connect. And I'm kind of seeing this, I kind of was too. Suddenly, by the time you come back in January and maybe you do an evaluation and you refer, you feel like a lot of the school year has been missed. Mm-hmm. So I think that this will really capture, more of that that time that students will be able to access. So thank you for that.
And, our children, especially at the elementary level, grow exponentially. So waiting to the midway point in a school year is just, again, far too long. So thank you.
Well, thank you for bringing it forward. I'll third or fourth or whatever on the changing of the conferences. And more than happy to consider the day before Thanksgiving. When we originally played around with February break 1,000,000 years ago, Marge and Shirley will have to remind me when that was. We had some trouble with attendance. This is maybe 7 years ago, on the Friday. So the only thing I would say is I'm more than happy to support what's better academically. But it could be something we have to revisit if it doesn't work. I believe we had a day where there were 1,000 absences the first time we did it. So there's a risk there.
Great.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments? All right. May I have a motion to approve the proposed changes to the 2024-2025 school district calendar? That's Dave, seconded by Julie. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you very much.
So the 25-26 calendar just replicates just what you have approved. There are no PLC days in there because we may come back with a different proposal about that in the fall or after the budget process or during the budget process. So other than that, it puts down all the professional learning days, vacations, Thanksgiving Day, or Thanksgiving Eve, sorry. So it's the same as what you just approved.
Okay. Any questions about that? No. All right. With that, may I have a motion to approve the proposed changes? Or do I have a motion?
You actually don't need one.
It's a first
I'll
reading.
come on
Just
for,
kidding.
yeah, thank you.
Okay. So we'll come back next
Yep.
month.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Discussion on April 23-24 financial report and possible action on proposed budget transfers. Rich.
So this is the financial report through April. The general education RCs are forecasting a positive 93,617, while the special education RCs are forecasting a deficit of $270,884 for a total projected deficit of $177,267. The Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance did approve a special appropriation in the amount of $181,250. It is still pending the RTM's approval. So if that is approved, we'd be positive just shy of $4,000. Overall salaries are forecasted at a positive 8,500. The big amounts are obviously we did not meet turnover as we've discussed in the past by 324,000, and it's partially offset by salary savings, savings in clubs and councils, and the new salary schedule for custodians. Overall, the operating forecast is a deficit of 22,335. Special education tuition is a deficit of 72,632. Athletic transportation is a deficit of just $15,000 due to the inability to get first student buses. And then we did implement a soft freeze, which accumulated across a number of different accounts, $62,897. The fixed expenses are a positive 25,453. It is a combination of savings and utilities such as electricity and heat, health insurance, and then deficit for a pending transfer of the DEA early notification incentive. Equipment is a positive 11,553. We did implement the soft freeze, as I mentioned, and that it did accumulate $4,600 in savings. And then revenue is a deficit of 200,484. The largest of that, and essentially the bulk of it, is excess costs, which is short by $199,382. We did receive all of our reimbursements to date from the state, and that number is final, being $199,000 short. Overall, we do have 3 transfers for consideration. The first is for $23,000, and that is for the DEA incentive notification. We are recommending taking the money from accounts from the soft freeze, which include textbooks and standardized testing. $72,632 to cover the tuition deficit in special education. We are recommending taking the funds from electricity, heat, salary savings from an executive assistant position that's vacant, and then some funds from the soft freeze across multiple accounts. And then finally, $15,000 for athletic transportation, and then funding those from various accounts from the soft freeze.
Any comments or questions? Sarah?
Just have a quick question about the soft freeze. Are there any lessons learned from that, you know, as we look forward to future budgeting? Because there anything you took away from that that maybe going forward could learn?
So I did mention, so we typically close on graduation. That's usually right around when we tell people to stop purchasing. So it was about a month, give or take, earlier. It did give the schools and the RCs, you know, an ability to kind of look at their accounts again and do almost like a reforecast for the following 6 weeks, which was a bit of a positive. You know, the good thing is we didn't have to do it that early. It was only 5 weeks before graduation.
Julie and Jonathan. Thank you. Rich, on that same topic, was there additional work that had to be done or the work was just done on a different timeline? Because I'm looking at line items where we harvested $22 and $36 and just
So if-
understanding what kind of resources went into.
Sure. So it was really just speeding up the process. So if you recall, every year when we close out the books, you'll see some $22 and $60 and $100 here and there. And again, that's largely either a combination of quantity changed. It could be an example of where we thought we were going to buy 100 books and we bought 98 books because we had less students, or it could be price point change. And so really we just sped it up a month.
Okay, thanks.
John?
Yeah, I was just going to add that we discussed this at length, kind of defining what a hard freeze and a soft freeze was because of new terminology in our finance committee meeting, and that, you know, I viewed it as a earlier reconciliation than we've done in the past. And we discussed, you know, can we do this every year or, you know, how early? You don't want to do it too early, clearly. But it's something we can discuss going forward into the next fiscal year, maybe doing it a little earlier than, you know, the end of the fiscal year, maybe a month earlier or something like that.
Any other comments, questions? All right. May I have a motion to approve the April budget transfers? That's John, seconded by Robin. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Discussion and possible action to develop a communications policy, March.
Mrs. Best, as the chair of the subcommittee, could probably speak to this as well.
Get there. So what we have in front of us in the packet is a memo and some example policies. Basically, part of the work of the communications committee has been to discuss and review communications policies that we see in neighboring districts with an eye toward can and should we be developing one for ourselves. We don't have a specific communications kind of general policy. So at this time, we have sort of captured some of the pieces that we see in some of the example policies that we've looked at and like that we think are worth considering. And we bring this forward to the board for the board to consider directing the policy committee to take up this work.
Okay. Comments or questions? Dave?
So not looking for Shipman to take up the pen here, but I don't think I saw a model policy for them. Did they have one?
They do not.
They don't. Okay. That was it. Thank you.
Okay. With that, may I have a motion to approve the development of a communications policy by the policy committee? Julie, seconded by.
Just a process question.
Yeah.
That policy didn't come. Sorry, would that policy then come?
It would.
Okay,
It
thank you.
would require 2 reads by our board, full board.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Julie, seconded by Greg. All those in favor? That's unanimous. That's okay. Okay. Thank you, Communications Committee. Right. Further discussion and possible action on proposed revisions to board policies. And I'm not going to read them all, March.
So policy 9160, we included a third possibility for your review. So our policy specifically says that the replacement of a resigning board member has to be by a person of the same policy. So if we don't want to deal with unaffiliated voters in the policy, we should adopt this third version. That's CABE's language. It has some of the other tweaks that we had made already to this policy, like resigning in writing and giving notice to the town clerk. But it doesn't say that the vacancy that's filled has to be filled by any particular person of any particular party. So that way the board can do whatever it wants. So now there are 3 potential policies to review, and we are deferring policy 9320. There was a suggestion about how to deal with the adjournment of a meeting at 10:30. Jessica requested some more time to figure out the mechanics. There are going to be additional legislative changes that will affect that policy, so we'll bring that back to you in the fall.
Okay. All right, let's start with 9160. Marge, do you want to read aloud the CABE version just because it's new to everybody, please?
Yes, so the CABE.
At least the paragraph in question.
Right.
Number 4.
Any vacancy occurring on the board with a typo, unless otherwise provided by charter or special act, shall be filled by a vote of the remaining members of the board. The chairperson of the board may consult with any applicable town committee, e.g. the Darien Democratic Town Committee or the Darien Republican Town Committee, in seeking to identify potential candidates for such vacancy.
John.
So to be clear, we'd have to still do the minority representation that's
have
outlined by
to.
the charter.
Yes.
And false any state statute.
Correct.
Wait, just one question. So
Yes.
that language would need to be added, right? The minority representation language is, or no?
No,
It says
because,
except, yes.
go ahead, Margie. you said.
It says except as otherwise provided by statute or charter.
Oh, I'm sorry. Missed.
Some charters are more restrictive than the state statute. That's why they're both included.
Okay, people have a preference?
I like the third option.
I think the third option is leaves everything the most open, which has pros and cons, but I'm fine with it.
Like one. Why, Dave? Not putting you on the spot, just wanting to understand that.
Can you read one if it's not too, sorry, I don't have it right up in front of me.
Yeah, I mean, I just read this as tracking most closely with the prior language that we had, which I thought was fine. It reads, the Board of Education shall fill such vacancy with an individual from the same political party as the member who previously filled the position. The chairperson of the board may consult any applicable town committee. First, I'd get rid of the parenthetical here. Example, the Darien Democratic Town Committee, the Darien Republican Town Committee, in seeking to identify potential candidates for such vacancy. Got it.
Anybody else have a strong opinion?
I might have flip-flopped just to one, so.
Greg?
I don't actually see much of a difference between 1 and 3.
Yeah.
So Shipman's only concern is that when you refer to an individual from the same political party, you haven't actually provided for the situation where it's an unaffiliated voter who resigned, since that's not a member of the political party.
And that's why I was thinking, just to remove the parenthetical, because if we have some third party that gets formed at some point, we're not limited in scope. It gives us the option should that exist.
Right, but it says you have to fill the vacancy with a member of the same political party.
Right.
So Shipman and Goodwin is considering revising their model policy based on our discussions too.
Oh, so they're not the only ones confused.
Correct,
We're not, I should say.
correct.
If I, so Marge, at that option 1, so to speak, that would preclude us from replacing a person with who is unaffiliated because it's supposed to be someone up a party.
I don't know that it would preclude it, but there would be probably a discussion.
Okay.
Whereas
Isn't the situation that if we don't fill a vacancy within a certain amount of time, then that gets done by the selectmen?
Yeah, which
Right, so that would be, so if we couldn't find somebody because there wasn't a party to consult with, then that would be the process, would step in and that seat would be filled.
I would think we would want to avoid.
Minority representation would still apply, right? So you're not gonna, they're not gonna be able to tip the power one way or the other.
No, I don't mean to be the power. Wouldn't you want the Board of Education to focus on replacing an education seat, not a select one?
I mean, that's, I didn't draft the.
No, I know. That's why I'm saying number 3 is better for me because then it makes it easier to do so.
Yeah, I mean, I was fine with not opening this can of worms at any point, but since we have, I like number one because it tracks most closely.
Okay.
Who works with Cape on, is their own internal counsel?
Yes. I think that Tom Mooney sometimes will advise them, but I don't know that he did on this.
On this one.
Or we can leave it as is, right?
Well, I think it reverts.
I'm sorry.
Good Lord, nothing.
So Marge Shipman is recommending the third.
So because it doesn't address, it doesn't mention a political party. And they are going to look at their current policy because they've now identified a potential problem with their model policy that talks about political parties and doesn't deal with unaffiliated voters.
Okay, so our legal counsel is suggesting the third one.
Or are they still figuring it out?
They're still figuring it out with the problem that they identified. So I don't know.
Why
which
don't we
way to-
defer and let Shipman do a little more work? Yeah,
That's fine.
I was going to make a motion to that effect.
okay,
So I make a motion, we table 9160 for tonight.
okay, I'll second you on that. All in favor? That's unanimous. Okay, keep going.
So we also deferred 9320 and there were no changes to any of the other proposed policies.
Okay, any questions on 9310 or 9320? Which one did you say you changed, Marge? I thought it was,
So 9320 is the one we are deferring.
got it. All right, any other questions on the revisions in here? Comments? No, okay. With that, may I have a motion? Yes.
I don't see 9320 in the packet,
Neither do I.
which, can you just give me are you talking meeting conduct, Marge?
Right, the time, place and notice of meetings, we had talked about what to do when a meeting gets to be 10:30. And we hadn't come to an agreement about that.
So they're still looking into that one.
So that's why we pulled it from this agenda till.
Oh, you pulled it. That's.
Yeah,
what-
I'm sorry.
That's why.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. All right, may I have a motion to approve the proposed revisions to board policies 9310, meeting conduct, 9340, construction and posting of an agenda, 9410, development of board policy, 9420, formulation, adoption, or deletion of bylaws, 9430, formulation, adoption, or deletion of policies, 9440, formulation, adoption, amendment, or deletion of administrative regulations, 9450, suspension of policies, bylaws, or administrative regulations, 9520, expense reimbursement for board members, 9530, insurance, 9540, board evaluation, 6840, graduation requirements. Sarah moves, second by John. All those in favor?
Sorry, I'm sorry. I have another question. The public comment is on for first time discussion. That wasn't part of the batch that you just mentioned.
That's in 9310, meeting conduct. That was second reading.
So was that part of this?
Mhm.
Or am I off on all of it? That's part of this.
That was part of this, and that's
Yeah.
in policy 9310, meeting conduct.
Okay, thank you. So
What
can I
we
just have a
So
quick
we
second?
removed the cap on any subject.
Yeah,
matter?
so can we
Yeah.
just have a quick discussion on that? So I want to make sure that I understand where we got to from this. So the public comment was that there is an opportunity for the board to limit individual time to 2 minutes from 3 minutes. And that is requiring a majority vote of board members present.
Right, it doesn't specify just 2 to 3, but it says it can limit the time.
So limit could be 10 seconds? Like, is there no?
If you get the votes, I guess.
Yeah, so that makes me nervous when there's no parameters and that it really could go that far. I'll be fully transparent. I don't like limiting public comment in any fashion. If this were to be written where it was reducing from 3 minutes to 2 minutes, at times when there was expected to be a large volume, a large agenda, and it was by majority, I think I could probably get on board with that as long as there was no limitation in the aggregate, meaning that it wasn't ever cut off at a certain point. There were never people that were turned away from speaking. However, in order for us to say that we have potential to do this, I would have questions about how we would know that we're expecting a large volume. Currently, we don't have any idea if we're going to have none, one, a lot. So I'm not really sure how we can make a policy when we don't have a mechanism for implementing, that sort of component of it.
Yeah, it was actually discussed at the time, Julie.
But was it resolved?
It was not resolved. It was discussed that we would have to decide how to do that.
Yeah,
We could have a
so-
sign-in sheet. We could.
So I don't want to change or approve a policy that we're not firm on.
I think what the committee said, I hear you on that because I agreed with you on this point. I think what the committee ended up saying was that at the policy level, they were fine with the language the way it was. I'm not convincing you either way. I'm just reflecting the conversation. At the policy level, what belonged in policy is here with the understanding we would have to create a process beneath that where there's probably a sign-in sheet most likely, but we'd have to figure out how to do that virtually as well.
So given our recent troubles with process, I would ask that we not batch this vote and take this one separately.
That would require an amendment, so.
So I would like to motion to make an
To
amendment.
pass, but, okay, so you're amending the motion to defer 9310.
Or at least vote on it separately. I just don't want to batch it with all the other ones.
Okay. Would you like to defer it or would you like to,
I would prefer to defer.
okay. So Katie makes a motion to defer it, to table it. Is there a second? I'll second that. Okay. All those in favor, sorry.
No, I was just, it doesn't matter that we all just voted on all of them.
Yeah, we did
Together. Sorry.
It does.
It does.
I mean,
I didn't vote.
It does, we're outside of Robert's rules. It's
Okay.
spirit of, I mean, either we don't use Robert's rules correctly or we try to go with the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish as a board,
Okay.
subject to process, but anyway. All those in favor
Of deferring.
of deferring?
I'm okay with deferring.
Okay.
Except we just voted on that.
Julie, Katie, and Jill, the motion fails.
Okay, so I'd like to make I'm sorry, are we counting that we voted on it or that we didn't vote on those batches?
Technically, we voted for it, Katie.
Okay, then I appreciate that, Jill. I just want to make sure that the minutes reflect that. Then I was a no vote for that. Or you can mark me as an abstention because I
Okay.
wasn't quite caught up and I'm not in favor of that. So you can mark me, Sarah, as an abstention for the batch. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Personnel report, March.
So 9 of those resignations and retirements were because of the board's incentive offer, which really created a lot of space for us to do good work on the budget.
Public comment.
Good evening. If anybody in person would like to participate in public comment, please come up to the podium and wait for the chair to recognize you. Please state your name and address for the record, and you will have up to 3 minutes to comment. Please note the time with the chair.
Laura Pesh-Gray, 11 Parsons Walk. I want to thank the Board of Ed and specifically Katie Lublin for speaking out and not approving the amended 2 million plus cuts for the budget and trying specifically to say no to the assistant principal addition at the middle school and high school. It seems like a lot of you on the Board of Ed have said that you're not thrilled with all the changes and you're accepting this not wholeheartedly, but it is what it is. And I was just hoping that you would have drilled down more similar to what Katie had kind of suggested, like, let's not do this, but do this. And it seems like the driver to this is that the special education restructure. And I think that the community at large and people that I've been speaking with are really confused about what that restructure and how it impacts the assistant principals at the high school and the middle school. So Dr. Adley, if it's possible for you to kind of explain, since these changes are going through, what those changes are and how it impacts those two positions, since it really takes up such a big part and it compromises the other aspects of the whole curriculum and teachers and art and music. So that's really all I have to say tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
If anybody else would like to participate in person, please approach the podium. If anybody online would like to participate, please use the raised hand icon. We have no raised hands at this time.
Okay, with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. That is Julie, seconded by John. All those in favor, that's unanimous.